for January 14th, 2014. May I have a roll call, please, Jackie?
Rosenbaum.
Here.
Member Lowe.
Here.
Member Black.
Here.
Vice President Maris.
Here.
President Knight.
Here. And seeing no one here to comment on closed session items, we will retire to closed session and expect to be back at 7 o'clock.
Hey, Jackie.
That's right. Have a party.
Oh, honey.
Keep him happy.
Well, there's kind of a new flood of collaboration. New kind of team at Albany Middle School called the Albany Middle School. Visual and Performing Arts. Sound crew. He's really actually he's an English teacher who does sound crew.
These are all the same, but it gives you a little bit more room to reconnected these, so this actually is mine. There, it should come in. Then I think this one is, if they choose to. Don't need to use it.
It's a great thing. Short skits. Anybody wants to go? AMS Drama Department, Visual Arts proudly present. One more time. Evening, Thursday, 5 o'clock out on the court.
Wellness report. Wellness report. You think so?
When is that? Could do it, Joanna. I can.
I wish I had a salad, a really delicious salad. Where can I get a good salad around here?
Jeff and I just went out. You know, there's Mexican. Right?
a little time off and a little
Yeah,
during
it
the?
was really nice.
It was good? Okay, good. Oh, I'm so glad. That's great.
You weren't too stressed about finals or
Oh,
anything, I mean, tests?
no, actually it's really nice because I got my very college app deadlines. Like I finished them.
Oh, aren't you an organized person? You must be probably in the 10% of your high school population. Wow.
I don't like procrastinating. I don't know.
Oh, I
stress easily.
I admire you, and I'm glad you had that time off.
How is your son doing?
Oh, Jason, he seems like he's fine. You know, he's a junior, so I think he's a little bit stressed.
That would be
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the open session of the Albany Unified School District Board of Education meeting for January 14th, 2014. May I have a roll call, please?
Student Board Member Chen. Member Rosenbaum.
Here.
Member Lowe.
Here.
Member Black.
Here.
Vice President Maris.
Here.
President Knight.
Here. And now for those who wish to participate, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
ready. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening in closed session, the board approved the stipulated agreement for student number 2013-1401 and agreed to suspend the expulsion. Now I need to ask for an approval of the agenda, unless there are any suggestions for changes. Ron?
I have two comments on the agenda. Number one is, at our last meeting, we were promised a report for this meeting on the CTE and the LEADS program at the high school, and it seems to be missing from the agenda. I did contact the superintendent, and she promised that it would be on the next agenda, so.
For the February 11th agenda, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, well, it's obviously not on this agenda.
It's not on this agenda.
The second thing is, as far as future board meetings, which are listed, what we're missing is we promised to schedule a meeting to review the brochure that's going out for the superintendent search, and I believe that was supposed to be on the 29th, which was a Wednesday. I don't recall what time of day, and Ray and Associates is asking for that. So in board and superintendent comments, I'd like to
Okay, try to coordinate the...
coordinate that.
Is
you know.
that the brochure or the advertisement?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
this is for the brochure. We're
Because-
supposed to finalize and approve the brochure. The advertisement, again, that's another thing for the agenda, is that, and it's not on the agenda because I didn't realize that was gonna come up, and that we didn't have another meeting coming up this month. That we really need to look at the advertising. And I saw your email about possibly being able to add an item tonight.
Yeah, so if, as I read board policy, board bylaws, if this is something that needs to be decided tonight, do we know that it does, or can it wait till the next meeting?
The proposal from Ray and Associates is to have it submitted to EdCal by the 20th of this month, so that it could be published at the end of the month, so that when the brochure comes out at the end of this month or the beginning of February, folks can use the link that they'll provide and tap into the brochure, which is the real detail of all the things that we're going to determine over the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so according to board bylaws, since the board did not know of this requirement
Right.
for quick action,
Or did I?
at the time the agenda was created, if the majority of the board votes tonight to affirm that we didn't know about it and that we need to make that decision, that we can legally discuss it and include it in the agenda tonight, even though it wasn't noticed. So I would make that proposal that we, or move that we add that to the agenda.
And just as an aside, I think it's not as big a deal as we think. So, and I've actually brought some samples along so that if we discuss it tonight, and I actually talked to the folks at Ray this morning, and so I can share that if we choose to agendize that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is your proposal then to add a discussion item surrounding the advertising?
Yeah, the wording of the
The wording of the advertising this evening, and we need to do it because they need that information.
Right,
to
it would
keep
be an action item.
Yeah, we,
Right, and they also need the information on what time of the day, because of their schedules, that we would be meeting on the 29th to talk about the actual brochure, which is a much bigger deal.
right.
Right, but that's,
And I'll explain
That
that.
can be
So that's a
handled,
part of the agenda item,
no,
that discussion?
that's separate, I think.
that's separate.
It could be, or we could just decide at the end. All we have to do is pick a time.
I think calendar items we can work out any time. We don't need
Yeah.
a specific agenda item, but for approving a piece of advertising, which is what we really need to do tonight, we have to add an action item. So then we will add to the agenda.
Yeah, well, that was a
If-
motion.
That was the
We need
motion. Do I have a second for
It
that?
has to be a majority of the board.
Right.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adding that agenda item?
Aye.
All right, so we'll add it to review and action as
Great.
D.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I was just as surprised as everybody.
Given that change, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's move on then. We've got the consent calendar. Do I have any questions or comments on the consent calendar or comments from the public on the consent calendar?
Yeah, I'd like to pull item, let's see, the audit, item F3.
F3.
It's on the consent calendar. It's
The audit
item
report.
three on the-
Oh,
yes,
three.
it's item 3 on
The audit report.
3A, I have the same one, so.
3A.
And I believe if we have questions on the consent calendar, I'd like to propose, I'm sorry, on the audit report, I'd like to propose that we leave the item in the consent and merely ask a few questions, because I believe we have our auditor here, Mr. Wilkinson, and I'm sure he'd appreciate not having to wait until much later this evening for those.
Rather
Questions
than
to be
pulling
asked.
it, we can just discuss.
We can discuss it under
Yeah.
the consent.
Good
Okay,
idea.
Right.
great. Questions on any other items?
No.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead then with audit report questions. Alan, do you want to begin?
Sure. On page 116 of the packet, or page 61 of the audit, it's the findings at the end.
Oh, yes, sir.
Concerning the questions,
16, I think.
the costs
116.
that were questioned, page 116, yeah.
116, so it's on, I've got to go to a different.
No, that's not,
As part of our audit,
right.
we have certain programs that we have to look at for compliance. And this year, it kind of rotates, but this year, I believe it was Title I and special education came up in our little goodie that we had to look at those. And so we found that we weren't documenting the time properly. There's a compliance item, and it's in the state accounting manual on how to do that. So the recommendation that we had, and then Mrs. Harden gave us your response, and which seemed sufficient to us, that by doing that, we're going to correct that problem. The question costs, what we're required to do is take the total amount of that program that was paid for salaries, benefits, and question those costs. I have never, ever seen them say, give us the money back. Basically, what CDE is looking for is that we make the necessary corrections to our procedures, and then once they read the report, I don't know, have they contacted you?
I was just going to
Okay,
comment,
go ahead.
yes, we did receive the letter from CDE
Okay.
requesting all the documentation
Yeah.
of our policies, procedures. That's already been sent back to CDE, and they're fine with our response and
Yeah.
our documentation for that finding.
That's typically the way that it works, because the federal auditors will review all of these little things from the state and make sure that we've made the necessary corrections. Now, if we come back next year and we have the same problem, then that's a different story. Then we have to issue it as a finding again, and then CDE may say, hey, what are you doing? To get that corrected. But the main thing is we want to make sure it's corrected. And what we have to question, like I said, is the salaries and benefits for those employees.
And they looked all right to you. What I'm seeing here is that it's a matter of signing these documents.
Pretty much that's it.
And it was not done at the proper time? It was done and not at the proper time?
It was done, but it has to be done, there are things that either monthly or semi-annually, and the dates on them just weren't,
Okay.
they weren't jiving.
That's not a big deal, bottom line.
Well,
It could be.
Could be?
yeah, if
Okay.
we don't start doing it properly, it could be a big deal. But the response that we had seemed sufficient to address the problem, correct it. And what we will do definitely is, because there was a finding, then in the 13-14 audit, we have to look at that again and make sure that it was corrected. If we come up and say, hey, they didn't correct it, they're still doing the same thing, then it could be a big issue.
Yeah. So last year, I think I remember, a year or two ago, the food services receipts being signed or submitted, whatever.
That was
timely
last
manner.
year.
And that was corrected.
One of the things that we do is every time, if we issue a finding, then the next year we review that, and if it hasn't been corrected, then we will put it as a finding again and note that it's a prior year finding that wasn't corrected. But 90% of the cases, I think the districts...
We respond appropriately.
They do, and nobody wants to have a problem.
No.
And so...
Particularly Lori.
Yeah, Lori doesn't need more problems, so she gets it corrected. So, and then you'll notice, you noticed on page 61, that if you go to 63 in the audit report, what that does, that summarizes the prior year finding, and then, you know, what happened. And that's where you would have seen, we would have said not implemented if they didn't do it, and then reissue the finding again.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the correction basically is to fix the way we have paperwork
And it has
signed.
been corrected. New forms have been devised, they've been distributed, signed. CDE has been given a packet of information to verify that we've corrected it.
So what I am pleased about is that's the only correction we had to make.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. We have
Good job.
great
I
people.
didn't understand it until tonight, so that's why I
Yeah,
my
and
question
that's
is
part of the
answered.
federal. I think I've mentioned to you before that not only the financial part, but there's compliance issues. The state has a number of compliance or items that we have to look at, and that's addressed in a letter, and numerous of those, you know, attendance, instructional minutes, et cetera. So we have to go through certain compliance items and check for compliance. Same way with the federal, because the dollar amount that you spend, and then there's a little table how we calculate what programs need to be looked at, and those programs change so that you don't look at the same program every year. But if there's a finding, then we have to look at it the next year, plus additional ones. So that we will look at that again, make sure that those that what Lori said is happening, and that's what CD really looks for. Then is make sure that it's okay. So yeah, we had the compliance part, everything there. Usually one of the things that I mention is on page 49 of your report. It's called the financial trends and analysis. And what that does is just takes the general fund for the last 3 years, kind of shows you where you've gone revenue, how your fund balance has increased or decreased, and then your budget number for the next year. So that's usually, a lot of people say, how'd we do? You know, it's kind of hard to say how you did, but if you go and just look at that, it gives you the general fund. And probably the one I still get a lot of questions about is the debt on the book for what we call OPEB. Just keeps growing and growing. It probably went up around $400,000 for you this year. And that seems like that's going to be about the dollar amount that it's going to keep going up for another 24, 25 years.
Which amount is that?
It's called OPEB, the Other Post-Employment Benefits. You're retired.
Gotcha.
And the unfunded liability, a few years ago, we were required to now start reporting that, and that now shows up as a liability to the district. And there's a footnote that explains, you know, who gets what, and after so many years, and this and that. And you'll see that there's a calculation that the actuaries do as to what that dollar amount is, and that keeps going up, like I said, about 400,000, 350 to 400,000 a year for your district. That'll just keep adding on there. So, yeah, that's a big thing. And, you know, in the state, I know you've heard all about all of that.
Well, throughout the state, city schools are all suffering.
Everybody, you know, it's a big deal. And so it's in there. There's a footnote. I think, every 3 years you have to have a new actuary study, and they'll recalculate it based on the employees and come up with any new amounts. So that's still in there. And I usually get asked questions, you know, what is this big dollar amount? And that's what it is. But I think it's about $1.7 million for you now in that neighborhood. So that's going to keep happening. Other than that, I mean, things were good. We were out testing the programs. One of the things that we do, just so you know, we do our rotation. And actually, I did most of the review this year. My son, who works for us, he was kind of taking charge this year, and I was kind of doing the review. And so we rotate around so that we get different people looking at things. And I get to come to board meetings, but I don't get to do all the work anymore, so that's a good thing. And the last good thing is we got the letter a couple weeks ago that the state controller's office said the report was accepted, which is good because I get my last 10% of my money, which we wait for those letters to come. So we like to get that, but it has been accepted by the controller's office, and the CDE is conforming to everything. So that's a good deal. So,
Great.
Any other questions that you have, I can answer. We probably should have, made a bigger announcement that the audit report was going to be here to kind of have a bigger crowd.
Have a bigger crowd, yeah. We'll be sure to do that next year.
Next year, I think you ought to promote that a little more to get more people here. But
Meeting highlights, absolutely.
Is that sleep aids or what?
but I know all of you have read it, and then when you have hard time sleeping, you'll pick it up and read it again. But if you go through and you see things that maybe you don't understand, wonder what that is, please feel free to give us a call anytime. We'll be happy to answer questions. Sometimes this is really different. If you have a business, you look at our reports for schools, it's a lot different than your business, and you might want to know, what is this? But please feel free to give us a call at any time. We'll be happy to answer any questions or why we look at certain things or do certain things so that you have an understanding of the report. Okay?
Very much appreciated.
Okay, if there's no other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you so
Very
much.
good. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Have a great trip.
All right. Anything else on the consent calendar this evening? Or a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor? We're approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I don't have to tell you guys what to say. You know what to say. All right, now we're at the student member report.
Okay, so this past week, leadership has been focusing most of its efforts on dividing into different groups to work towards Winter Ball, which is on Saturday, February 1st. And we are also trying to work with the local Pasta Pomodoro on fundraising for the event. And also, Albany High's Build On, if you guys remember them, they've raised approximately $25,000 since September, so they are only $5,000 away from their goal of $30,000 to build a school in Nicaragua.
Fantastic. Are they continuing fundraising efforts, do you know?
Yeah, they are.
They're out baking?
They do a lot of bake sales,
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Still standing on 4th Street and selling cookies and things.
I attended a recent meeting of Build On, and I think $15,000, that 25 came from bake sales.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, incredible.
Really?
That's an interesting statistic.
They
Board
were,
member Mears.
That's a lot of cookies.
on Black Friday, they were out on Union Square and they raised several thousand, I think, on that one day.
That's
Yeah, I see them all over. As far as the Winter Ball, I saw something on an email, I think today or yesterday, just for the community to know that they're still looking for
Parent volunteers.
parent volunteers and donations of food and drinks and things like that. So we want to make sure that
Parent
everybody
help
knows
is
that.
always appreciated.
And they could, if they want to volunteer or bring something, who should they contact?
They should contact either Thalia Tom or Amberlyn Saw. They are our ASB presidents and vice presidents, and I believe their email is on the school website.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now we have a staff report on McGregor High School.
This, hard to find things. All right, there we go.
So good evening, board trustees, esteemed colleagues, and community members. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to present an update on McGregor High School. Tonight, I will describe the current program being offered at McGregor, including the schedule and staffing, enrollment, challenges, along with some possible options for the future. Currently, there are 19 high-need students enrolled at McGregor. There are 11 boys and 8 girls. 7 of the students, or 37%, have IEPs, and 1 student has a 504. 5 students qualify for the federal free and reduced lunch program, which makes them Title I students.
Marcia, could you explain what IEP and 504 mean?
Sure, those are, IEP is an individual education plan, which means the student's receiving some kind of special education services or in a special ed program. And a 504 is a related plan, but it's a federal mandate to provide for accommodations for students. The ethnic breakdown is as follows. There are 3 Asian or other Asian students, which is 16% of the population, 5 Hispanic, 26%, 2 African American, 11%, 3 white, 16%, and 16 are mixed for 32%. That's not too far off the overall demographics of the district. The current program, the McGregor schedule matches the schedule of Albany High School. However, Albany offers 7 periods and McGregor offers 5, and that's 2nd through 6th period. As you can see, and I'll show you another schematic of the current schedule. 2nd period, we offer 2 classes. There's a culinary class, which is a mixed class with Albany High School, and we actually have 3 students from Emeryville in that class as well, or English. 3rd period is a combined English class. 4th period is a combined history social science class. 5th period is a combined math class. And 6th period is a combined non-laboratory science program.
And those are all taught in one classroom, all 19 or whatever number?
Correct. Not all 19 students
No.
take all 6 periods,
Right.
but yes, there's, you're ahead of me, Mr. Maris,
Oh,
but
sorry.
that's quite all right. Combined classes like this present special challenges for teachers to plan, prepare, teach, and adjust for individual student needs while maintaining an Albany level standard of rigor.
Now, when combined means there's more than one grade in that class, or
Not only is there more than one
topic?
grade, but there's more than one course being offered. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but for example, in mathematics, Algebra 1, geometry, and some Algebra 2 are offered depending on what the particular student needs to round out their high school graduation requirements. And the McGregor does not offer A through G approved courses. So currently we have 10 students, or 53%, taking classes at AHS as well as at McGregor. 7 of those students take 2 classes at the high school, while the other 3 take 3, 4, and 5 classes at the high school. So here's another look at what the schedule looks like. Monday, all 6 periods are offered. Tuesday and Thursday, it's just the odd periods, and then on Wednesday and Friday, it's the even periods. And this is exactly the same schedule that the high school has.
So you're following the same block schedule as the high school.
Exactly. But we do not offer that 1st or 7th period, and those are the 2 periods that are the most commonly taken by McGregor students at the high school.
So Tuesday and Thursday are shorter days.
Yes, they don't start till 9:40 and they're out by 1:05. I had hoped that that would improve our on-time arrival
Did it?
for some students.
Yeah, okay.
McGregor is currently assigned 1 full-time equivalent teaching position, and that's currently comprised of 4 teachers. We have a .4 English teacher, a .2 history social science teacher, a .2 math teacher, and a .2 science teacher. 3 of those teachers also teach at the high school, so we share them. And 1 of those teachers teaches at AMS. So they're currently all shared positions. We have a secretary that we share with the middle school. We get about 0.4 or 3 hours at McGregor, and she works from 9 to 12 at McGregor and the other hours at the middle school. We have a 0.2 counselor assigned to McGregor, and her other 0.2 is at the high school, which is a correction from the copy you got in your board packet. I mistakenly made that an AMS. We have a .2 mental health coordinator who also supervises an intern who works with McGregor students. There is a full-time campus supervisor that is shared with the middle school, and McGregor gets about 0.6 of that person's time. There is a full-time fire watch assigned solely to McGregor. And there is a custodian who we share with not only the ACC and the district office, but he also cleans some of the after-school portables at OV. So that is the staff currently assigned or serving McGregor and shared with either the middle school or the high school or other programs. It is a given that high-needs students, such as those served at McGregor, but also served in other programs like special education, that they require more support and services and thus cost more than what you might call a typical student. So alternative education, special education, career technical education are but 3 examples of programs that have higher than the typical costs to meet the needs of the students who are involved in those programs. And while the students have high needs, I strongly urge that final decisions need to be based on student and program needs. However, I thought that it was important to at least examine the costs that are involved so that we're at least know what we're dealing with and what we're authorizing or proposing for both what we're currently doing and for whatever possible options we might care to look at. So these are the current program costs being charged to McGregor. The costs on this slide do not reflect the shared custodial support and supplies. So this includes salary and benefits of the staff involved. And McGregor has not currently being charged anything for administration. I'm currently providing that administration as part of my regular assignment. So the total costs are about $170,000. However, McGregor also brings in some money with its average daily attendance, and I worked with Associate Superintendent Harden on all of the numbers here because he's the guru. So we just took a ballpark 70% attendance rate for McGregor using the new LCFF funding, which is in place this year. McGregor, we estimate, will bring in approximately $88,000–$89,000 in revenue. So as of December 1st, and attendance is quite variable at McGregor. At the end of December, we had one student with 100% attendance, all the way to one student with 22.5% attendance. But 10 students had attendance of 80% or better. So, okay.
Before you,
Yeah, I can go back.
Before you go on, I mean, we're not charging for administration, but your duties there take away from other things that you could be doing.
That's correct.
And so maybe we can't assign a number to it, but I think we shouldn't forget that there is a cost.
And that's the $78,000 was the cost last year, which is why I put that in parentheses. And then all of the cost estimates that I will provide for you tonight will either specifically say this includes administrative costs or specifically says without, so you know the difference.
So the $78,000 was for the previous administrators?
There was a 0.6 principal assigned to McGregor last year, and the approximate cost of that salary and benefits was $78,000.
Thanks.
So running a small standalone program provides its own set of challenges, the biggest of which, in my opinion, is meeting student course and credit recovery needs. At this time, all classes are combined classes, like I mentioned before, so providing the appropriate rigor and instruction in 2 to 3 core classes is challenging. So, for example, our history social science teacher is offering both world and U.S. history at the same time. Our math class, as I mentioned, is offering Algebra 1, Geometry, and in one case, Algebra 2. Our non-lab science is offering both biology and chemistry, and I did have one student taking some physics. So that is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge that we face academically for the students at McGregor is providing them appropriate instruction when teachers are having to have 2 or 3 preps or one class. So
Seems to me there'd be some advantage for a student to see the relationship between two different sciences as well. Biology and chemistry are certainly related in the material taught, and to see them taught at the same time could be.
Yes, you could look
helpful.
at both integrated math and an integrated
Right.
math approach and an integrated science approach. However, it then doesn't mesh with the high school offerings, and it makes it challenging if students are going to move back and forth between programs, how to manage which courses they're assigned.
Do we have any students taking lab science at the high school right now, or math at the high school?
Math. 2 students.
Is the high school not moving to an integrated math curriculum?
They are exploring it in a couple more years. They want to make as I understand it, they want to make the transition to Common Core first, and then explore moving to an integrated math sequence.
So the integrated program that was initiated several years ago is gone?
There is an integrated math, but it's not the majority. There's a small, a few sections being offered.
Particularly for students who have
Particularly
trouble
for
with
students who are
Algebra
struggling,
1.
right.
Is a culinary arts program offered to middle school students as well? At one time,
Yes, it's offered for 3 periods for the middle school students. So it's part of their 7th grade wheel, and then they have an 8th grade elective. So the culinary kitchen is a very, very busy place.
Yeah.
It is used from 1st period through 7th period with very little time downtime. So in addition to the academic challenges, there are others. Most, if not all, of the current students have experienced some kind of trauma in their life, and they may lack some or many of the external supports that other students take for granted. So they require a greater level of counseling support. They have ongoing issues and often or occasionally need more support than the 2 days a week that's currently allotted to McGregor. Monitoring students is a challenge at the current location. There are multiple entry and exit points. In addition, we try very hard to keep the middle school students separate from the high school, from the AHS and the McGregor students. Also monitoring students' daily attendance and making sure they stay in class. I have students who sometimes leave during a class period, which is called a cut. But monitoring that is somewhat challenging because of the way the campus is laid out. And offers coverage when the secretary is not there, which she's there from 9 to 12. The office is not officially covered. Food services, there are no facilities to provide food services for the McGregor students. Breakfast, break, and lunch are available for them at both the middle school and the high school. But they don't always return to McGregor after. They've gone elsewhere.
they can snack from the culinary arts program as well.
And the break time is too short for them to walk up to the high school, get through the line, eat at break, and come back. So they either come back late or they don't come back. So there are some logistical challenges about feeding students. Covering staff absences, especially with part-time teachers, is challenging to get us subs who are willing to come in for a part of a day. And the facility itself is really not conducive for high school students. I think you're aware that it was originally built as a primary school. So the bathrooms are primary size, and the drinking fountains are primary sized. There's no staff lounge, and as I said, all of the McGregor classes take place in one classroom. So the students remain in the class, and the teachers rotate in and out of the class. So, in addition, due to the necessary part-time nature of the teaching staff, they're only together as a McGregor staff about 1 time a month when I pull them from their other site staff meetings. And administrative support needs to be on campus and visible, interacting and encourage student attendance and work productivity. So that's the current program. So what are our options? We could continue to operate the program that we do now. It's relatively cost effective. It addresses our student needs, but barely. And as a separate school on the same schedule as AHS, students are able to blend their schedules to the maximum extent that they wish, and they're able to select which school is their primary school. The disadvantages are all the ones I just enumerated to you, at least as it stands now. And when we talk about cost, cost per student depends on how you calculate it, and there are many, many ways to do it. So I worked with Assistant Superintendent Harden on the figures, and so we used the same calculation across all of the options. So we're at least comparing apples with apples. And so in this case, assuming 20 students, currently we're not charging for administration, so the cost is about $4,056 per student. If you add in those administrative costs, it goes to about $7,957 per student. And if you take the fire watch out, because I believe we're going to address that facility issue, so we won't need the fire watch, then the cost drops to $6,867 per student. Another option would be to expand McGregor. We could increase the teaching FTE by 0.8, so it would be 1.8. We could increase the counseling and mental health services by 0.4 to be a total of 0.8. We could increase the classified staff by 0.4 to include office coverage, eliminate the fire watch, address the administrative costs and address food services and serve maybe 40, up to 45 students, but I used 40 as the calculation. The advantages of that was they would be continued to have a separate campus. The increased teaching FTE would allow a student to be moved to another class during the same period if they were having a particularly difficult day with a particular student or teacher. Right now, we don't have that option. There's only one class at any one time. It would provide teacher support because there would be at least 2 McGregor teachers teaching during every period, and right now, that is not the case. It would increase the ability to monitor students' comings and going and would provide increased counseling access and support and would serve more students. Disadvantages, it would still be a separate but equal program, and it doesn't address the root cause or the failing of classes. And it's not a prevention strategy, it's an intervention or a makeup strategy. So the cost without a fire watch is about 4,834 students.
Dollars per student?
Dollars if you.
To 40 students, and you add all that FTE, including the administration. Did I misstate that?
4,000, and wasn't the previous number for the status quo 7 something, or am I
Well, the
misremembering?
status
With
quo
fewer
without
students.
administration is 4,056. If you include administration, it's 7,957.
Oh, okay.
And if you take the fire watch out, it's 6,860.
So it's similar numbers.
Mm-hmm.
More students, more FTE.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
So the figures you're giving are for 40 students instead of 20? the
Well,
most
if we
recent?
increase the FTE,
Sure.
we could serve more students. Right. So I estimated about 40 students if we expanded McGregor.
Right.
Another option would be to locate the McGregor program, whether as a standalone small school or a program at the high school. If we were to do that, it should be located in an area with one main entrance with appropriate staff to monitor and support students coming and going. And I've walked the campus with Ms. Peterson, who's the counselor who works both at McGregor and the high school, and we've identified some places where we think that might be appropriate if that were the direction that the board chooses to go.
On the high.
Mm-hmm. So the advantages, there would be additional staff would be available full-time to support students and teaching staff, full-time counseling department, full-time administration, full-time clerical, full-time campus supervisor, full-time staff. Food services is available on that campus at both break and lunch. The student activities and sports are more readily available and accessible. Full-time counseling along with an at-risk counselor would be available, and full-time office and campus security. The disadvantages to locating it there, the perception that some students need a separate location, that they may not be safe on a comprehensive high school campus. Also, we might lose the kind of unique sense of McGregor as a separate school. And assuming 20 students, and including the additional administration of 0.6, along with a 0.2 counts, the current allocation to McGregor, the cost is about $6,867 per student.
Could I ask a question before I forget what you said? You said something about a safer environment. They might lose what they've had, which is a safer environment at McGregor, or a more appropriate environment. Is that what I heard? My concern is that they're going to go right back to the high school where they had trouble, and there's an environment there which inhibits their ability to learn and feel comfortable.
I can only speak for the students that are currently assigned to McGregor. I've not had the day-to-day interaction with prior students, so I'm speaking of the 19 students whom I know on a first name every day, every period basis, and I have daily contact with parents and students. I only have one student who would be unwilling to go back to the high school in any capacity. So there's a perception on some people's parts, and I'm not saying it's incorrect. I'm just saying that there are some students who don't belong on a comprehensive high school campus. They belong somewhere else. I'm not seeing that in this particular group of students, but I think even if that were true, we could situate it at the high school so that it would seem to be a separate entity of itself.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that when McGregor was first formed, it was recognized that some of the students would do a lot better in a different environment. Teachers recognized that, and I think teachers felt it improved the high school situation as well to separate some of those students. Now we're talking about a flex program, pathways and all those things, which seems to me could offer those opportunities for those kids to hit off in a different way that they feel more comfortable on the high school campus. I think that's possible, but I think the board struggled with this last spring.
I'm just providing the board with options. I mean, there are,
and I appreciate it. Thank
you. There are places where continuation high schools exist on the same campus as comprehensive high schools, and there are lots of places where they exist separately. So both of those models exist, and we just have to come to some determination about what we think works best for our students in our community.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to think of all of the options to present to you tonight.
No, you're doing a good job, and you're really stimulating thoughts and I think concerns that are appropriate. So, I guess the other concern I have is that on these separate pathways, we provide the opportunities these kids are looking for, and provide more vocational training kinds of classes, build leads, and we're kind of stalled on the board right now on that issue, which concerns me. So,
right, I'm well aware of your interest in that area.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think Pat had a question too.
So thank you very much for presenting the.
I'm not done. I have another option for you. So, okay.
Actually, why don't I wait then?
Okay, sure.
You want to wait to Ron? Yeah.
So this is just a cost comparison for you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I think I skipped one. Yes, sorry, this is the next option, sorry. I call this the hybrid option. So we could, for the next couple of years, offer what I'm calling a hybrid solution. It would involve operating McGregor as it is, whether as a standalone school or located at a high school. I think it can be done either way. But also increasing the intervention and prevention programs that are offered at the high school. AHS Flex is part of that plan, but is projected to be fully operational in about a year. I met I went to the high school last week to get an update on the flex. I think you know that we've had a personnel change. And so they're having to revise it slightly, but the flex is, as it's conceptualized, will offer student-led tutoring, particularly for 9th and 10th graders, but available to other students. It will offer an online credit recovery program and some Albany-based independent study options that I'm currently working with Dr. Barone and his staff on developing the attendance accounting that has to be approved by the state in order to offer that. So if we, in addition to what the flex is projected to do, added, for example, 0.6 teaching FTE to the high school for credit recovery classes, which would be targeted primarily at 10th graders and maybe second semester 9th graders, which would then help prevent students from getting so far behind in credits, like 80 credits or 100 credits behind, that then requires them to be in a full-time credit recovery program. I'm thinking that that would help prevent students from getting so far behind in credits that they can't make it through in a 4-year regular high school program. It might eventually reduce the number of students who need a McGregor-like program. That would, of course, depend on the students and their motivation to complete their work.
I have a question about this,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I'm concerned when I see a statement like this because or out in the public when I hear that McGregor is a credit recovery program. McGregor is not a credit. It is part of the need for students, and it's been defined that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an alternative education program. And there are many students who've gone through McGregor who don't need credit recovery, and I think we have to keep that in mind. There are certain types of students who need a program for the very things that you were talking about: the emotional, the psychological, the communication
Mm-hmm.
needs that are just different than a regular high school student. So I know that we've used it for credit recovery, but that's just a small part of what you well know that alternative high school is a different animal.
Correct. However, I've read the documents from 30 years ago. It was opened as a continuation high school, and it's considered by that as the state. I can't speak for prior years, but all of the students currently at McGregor are significantly behind in credits.
I can speak for prior years, though.
I'm sure you can, because I can't. But
and there are other folks that maybe can as well. So
I'm sure true. So, but as it stands right now, at least as of this year, it's being used primarily as a credit recovery program or school.
well, that's one of my other concerns, in that I'm concerned that I see 19 students being served when it's just hard for me to conceptualize that that's the only students who need alternative education in grades 9 to 12. And that, there's been a perception out in the community that students who might need that kind of program have actually blocked from access to McGregor. I don't know, I'm not saying that's true or false, but there is a perception out there.
I have met with the counseling and the administrative staff, I think in November, taking a look at students who may need to be moved to McGregor, but we also have a capacity limit. We can probably take up to 5 or 6 more students with the current staffing that that's been allocated, and right now there's no room to grow McGregor at its current location.
So when we look at talk about facilities, depending on what kind of decisions we make,
right,
we need to take that into account.
Yes, you do.
And so this is actually really good timing.
I think Paul had a question.
Yeah, I actually had comments along the same lines as Ron's. Every time for the last several years we've discussed McGregor, there's been some question and confusion as to whether it's a continuation or alternative high school. And I think the greatest concern I've heard expressed by the board members who've been most involved at McGregor is for the students who need an alternative school, not the students who need credit recovery. And I see the high school moving fairly aggressively now towards offering more options for credit recovery. And if, in fact, credit recovery of itself can be handled at the high school, then we can, the board could conceivably take action to formally make McGregor an alternative program, and students who only need credit recovery wouldn't go to McGregor in that case. And then we could more consciously recruit students who would benefit from an alternative program and offer a more comprehensive alternative program. So I'm just proposing that that's something the board should formally consider and look at what it would take to make that actually happen.
I know that we can also, if you want to use a different, maybe a slightly different bent on what the word comprehensive is, a comprehensive high school would offer all of those alternatives to meet the needs of their students. So, and it doesn't have to be all on the same campus. It can be in other locations as well. So, but that would be the direction of the board. I'm just trying to think of all of the different, the State Department has McGregor as a continuation high school. That's how it's listed. We can certainly petition them and make a different decision and say it's really an alternative high school, not a continuation high school. But that's how it's coded right now. So,
Yeah, a code is a code, but what are the real needs of kids? And that's what we really need to talk about.
right.
And, I'm concerned that no matter how much we flex on one campus, we might not be able to flex enough for some students.
That's true. We may not. So,
Yeah, that's certainly been my impression. I'm sorry, Pat, didn't mean to cut you off, but
sorry, Pat.
just to follow along on that, because having attended a couple of graduation ceremonies from McGregor, it's quite clear that we have students there who really benefited from being in that particular situation, being sort of pulled out and given what they needed, and that they thrived in that situation, whereas they hadn't before, or they wouldn't have been there. So it wasn't just making up lost credit. So I think we all sort of sense that there is that need that needs to be met in some way.
I think that failing classes, it may be, what you're saying is a symptom of some of the other issues that students might be dealing with.
Absolutely.
And so that's what brings them to McGregor. That's the symptom. Are there other things going on in their lives? Absolutely.
I can walk around at Trader Joe's on the one on University and Martin Luther King, and that's an Albany McGregor student. That's an Albany, and they're all working. They've all graduated. Some of them are thriving. Ones that I was really concerned about.
Right.
Pat, you wanted to get in, I think.
Well, I think I pretty much just agree with what everyone else is saying, but I want to highlight maybe the particular population of students that I think that the board has expressed some about. So, I mean, I think it's wonderful that the high school is beginning to try the flex program and different kinds of alternative programs to meet the needs of kids who, for different reasons, don't fit into the traditional high school. But I think, we're in particular, and Ron sort of expressed that, I think, we're very concerned about the particular kind of student who is vulnerable socially, emotionally, for reasons in their life, and that they particularly need the kind of program that provides the kind of teaching support and counseling support that gives them the extra attention and care that they might need to get through a period or get through that time. And so to me, it actually doesn't really matter whether it's, if you feel it can be at the high school in a more protected environment or in a separate place, I don't really feel that needs to be my decision. But the particular kinds of support that particular group of student needs, I think is something that I've heard the board say many times, we just don't want to let them slip through the cracks. And so I don't really care what the label is, but and we do need to spend more money on that population.
Yes, we do.
Need to give them more support in specific ways, including smaller, class sizes, so the teacher can give them the attention that they need, and also the mental health counseling. So that is something I would advocate for, but I'm not. And so I want to say again, I agree. I mean, I think that it's not what some of these other programs are, like Flex and that sort of thing necessarily, although they may benefit from access to that. So I can see the argument for possibly being on the high school.
There are pros and cons to both.
And moving
approaches.
Kids back and forth, which I've had a lot of experience with, and as other folks have, makes a lot of sense, because today a student might need this and might need to be here next week or next year or next month. And that's a matter of communication between programs or fitting them together.
Right.
I'm very concerned about, 2 days a week counseling services for students who need 5 days a week. Just as I am at the high school where I see .2s and .4s, when students need access to those, those mental health and those emotional resources, as well as making sure that they're on the right track.
I agree.
It's sort of a way a travesty.
It's challenging.
I have a question for Lori with respect to all of this. We hear that the state's going to be making some decisions pretty soon as to how much money the schools are going to be getting. Is this going to be considered one-time money, or is this going to be kind of budgeted in a way that we can hire people with it?
At this point, it's supposed to be ongoing. We are attending, Superintendent Stevenson and myself are attending a governor's budget conference this Friday in Sacramento to get all the details. But you just have to remember this is sort of the beginning of the budget process. And so what they're proposing now is based on information that they currently have. It'll change again in May, and then it will change again in July or August. But at this point, it does look like we will receive additional funding ongoing.
Great, thank you.
Is that for deferrals? We're gonna be, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, finish.
Well, I just wanted to say, to follow up on yesterday's EdCal. The governor's 2014-15 proposal includes a $61.6 billion in Proposition 98 funding, an increase of $6.3 billion over the current budget.
Right. And a lot
If
of
that trickles down,
yeah,
we can solve a lot
a
of our
lot of it
problems.
is going to, as you just mentioned, to eliminate deferrals. So a large chunk of that will just go for deferrals. So that doesn't mean additional funds to us. It just means better cash flow. But we're definitely projected at this point to probably receive about 10% more. The funding gap that we talked about a couple board meetings ago with what we're actually supposed to receive versus what we do receive, what used to be the deficit, that number is still very vague. They haven't really released what they think the funding gap will be. They've only released what they're anticipating the actual funding per student to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what we'll receive. But we're hoping that it is ongoing, and at this point, it looks like it will be.
Yay.
Alan?
So if we're still on the hybrid,
Yes, we still are.
I'm looking at the cost summary in the table.
Mhm.
I'm a little confused on some of the numbers. The revenue is $88,000 for 80 students served. Shouldn't that be a lot higher if we're
Well,
serving
see,
80 students?
the hybrid is tricky because 80 is how many would be served if we gave more cost recovery classes, but they're already generating ADA, so you can't really say that they're going to bring in more ADA because they're already, that would just be part of their regular course. So the hybrid calculation was tricky for me and for Lori, and I don't have a good way to.
Okay, well, that helps explain
Yeah.
why I'm confused.
It would serve.
Because that's basically the ADA for 20 students, not
Yes.
80. Yeah.
Yes, because in the hybrid, I'm saying continue to offer a McGregor-like program, whether it's at a separate location or at the high school, but we will still need, at minimum, what we're doing right now. And in addition to that, add some FTE to the high school for credit recovery programs to address 9th and 10th grade needs,
Right.
to prevent them maybe from getting so far deficient in credits. I mean, I have students who are 100 credits deficient in their junior.
I think
And
one,
then,
Go ahead. So
then
we
I
can
have
stop
this
that.
same concern about the expenses. The expenses seem kind of low for 80 students as well. And
The
that's
expenses,
spread out
well, the
as
expenses stayed the same as the current McGregor, and then I added the 40, I think it's, what did I say, 44,000 for the additional FTE.
And again, that's for 20 students, not 80.
Well,
But they're spread out again the same way here.
Well, the 44,000 would be for those additional 60 students who would be served in a credit recovery course
Really?
at the high school. Well, it could.
That sounds like magic. I don't see
Well,
why-
one section would serve about 20 students, and I just said, well, maybe there would be 60 students, 20 in each section, If we give them a 0.6, that's 3 sections.
Well, why is the fire watch included in that one?
I just wanted, which one?
Hybrid.
With Firewatch, it says.
Right, and it's easy to take out. I'm trying to remember why I think I ran it both ways. I should probably have done that without the Firewatch.
I guess bottom line, I'm concerned about the cost per student being so much lower in the hybrid than it is in anything
Well,
else.
Alan, I don't want cost to be the overriding
That's fine,
decision-making
but
factor,
It's a number. I'm a
right.
number cruncher.
Right, I know you are. So I just was trying to give us kind of a ballpark, but the cost goes down because you're serving 80 students. And the 0.6, which would be the 9th and 10th grade credit recovery, doesn't require additional administrative support per se.
Yeah.
Well, I kept all of those supports for the McGregor because it could be a separate program, in a separate location.
Yeah.
Or even if we move the McGregor program to the high school, it still needs administrative support. It still needs counseling support. It still needs secretarial support. It still needs campus supervisor support. So I didn't reduce any of those costs when I moved it to the high school as an option. I kept all of those costs intact.
One thing to keep in mind, which we can't put a specific number on, but which you can think about conceptually, is that we might hypothesize that the student population that we will serve will fit some of the local control funding formula focuses, for example, lower socioeconomic, maybe some English language learners and so forth. And even though the State Board of Education hasn't come down, number by number and said how we should do it, we know the basic idea is that we need to show that we are using the monies that we're given to serve the students who have these additional needs.
Right.
So I think that's, one thing to keep in mind with we'll be getting some extra money, and there should be certain ways in which we should be spending it. And this, to me, this population seems to me, particularly within the scope of Albany, to possibly fit that, even though there's a lot that's unclear yet in terms of the regulations.
It's definitely something to look at. Thank you. Yeah.
So in conclusion, I just observed that we are going to continue to need to offer a credit recovery program, and that credit recovery programs in schools are expensive, relatively speaking, to staff and operate. Small schools struggle with academic quality and rigor, and we do need to expand the early intervention prevention programs and services at the high school in some way. And I mean, Flex is a good step. Some of the small learning communities that have been put into place, I'll be bringing you a report at the next board meeting on career technical education and including those small learning communities, and the proposal for the Build and Lead program. And those are all steps in the right direction of diversifying the offerings at the high school to meet, diverse student needs.
Having heard some of these concerns from the board, I wonder if you could give us a sense of the timeline on which decisions need to be made about McGregor. I mean, how are we going to, we have the school replacement project, at least the building replacement project for that site.
That's right.
And so students have to be out at least for part of next year of the physical space. So what is our timeline for deciding what to do for the fall? And then what is the timeline for deciding what do we do after that?
That's good questions.
Well, it's complicated.
Yeah.
We're due to, there's also the WASC accreditation for McGregor, and I'm going to be writing them and asking for a 1-year postponement on that.
Good.
So I don't think, we haven't finalized the decision about the future of McGregor, and I think that this is not a good year to do a self-study in preparation for an accreditation visit next year.
I agree.
And I can't imagine that they're going to disagree with that. So I think that obviously the sooner you make a decision and give us direction, the sooner we can develop that program, or if you have a direction that you'd like us to bring a proposal back to, or 2 proposals, with staffing and location and, estimates and those kinds of things, we can certainly do that. I just wanted to give you an update, and I presented with you the options that I could think of. If you come up with some other ones, I'm certainly open to those suggestions. I think that definitely if the building is slated for demolition by the end of, starting when school's out June 13th or 14th, we need to know where to pack up and move our stuff.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, and one thing you can think about is that we could think of this as a temporary opportunity or, a chance to innovate. Then if we don't have that space to keep McGregor separate, it might be an opportunity at that point, whatever the board decides, whatever configuration they recommend, to try something at the high school if there is, as you walk the campus and took a look, if there is a place that you feel would be appropriate.
I think it might involve some construction, but that could be done over the summer,
So we would need to make
depending
this
on
decision.
what you direct us to do, right?
It seems like we need to agendize a discussion really fairly soon on both the temporary and the long-term
Right.
solutions.
I agree.
Clearly, yeah, two items there, the short-term and the long-term, and how they will
Mesh.
fit together. So I will take that down as a
Thank you.
direction for the agenda committee to get that on the agenda as soon as we
And
can.
is there anything that you would like from staff, any other additional information, or?
So you gave us a lot of good data which didn't appear in the packet. And I think you were reading it, so,
I write
you-
a script usually so I don't forget something important.
but is that in a document that you could transfer to us? Or I'm thinking the
I can-
demographics and,
Yeah, I can easily send it to you as an email, sure.
That'd be great.
thank you.
Yeah.
I guess, I think maybe what I would like is that, my mind is open to how to best serve the population of students we've been talking about, but I guess I'd like to know if you've seen a model elsewhere in another district, maybe similar in size to ours, where there was a successful, I don't want to put the label on alternative education program or whatever you want to call it, set in the larger comprehensive high school, if that's one of the things we're thinking about. Because usually, some of the places we've been talking about have them separated. So I just would want to make sure that, you've seen another program that's just worked fine and been successful.
Well, Diane and I visited Millennium High School, which is over in Piedmont, and it is on,
Sort of.
well, it's a high school and a middle school and a continuation high school, and the building that the continuation high school is in also has high school classes, but they're all one big campus. It was
Yeah, they are.
big. And they have about 80 students in their continuation high school. They do accept inter-district transfer requests. They have a whole process to apply, and they screen them and interview them.
And those students at Millennium are sometimes going back and forth to the larger comprehensive high school?
Yes,
Okay.
they are.
Well, you don't have to tell me now, but, you might want to mention what you thought worked.
I mean, it's a very unique looking situation. We can't do something that looks like Millennium.
That's why I didn't
Yeah, I know
propose
that.
anything
Yeah.
quite like that. So I don't know that we're interested in inter-district transfers and, having a program
Yeah.
that large, so.
Yeah, even physically, it's, looks different.
But anyway, it would be useful
Yes,
to hear
be happy to.
what would seem like it were effective practices that could transfer
Sure.
to our setting.
So Millennium did have, when I visited several years ago, did have a separate space.
Yeah.
And they could integrate from that separate space into, I think they're in a lower floor or basement. It's hard to read the Piedmont campus because it's on a hill. but-
Yeah, well, we walked into what I believe is the second floor of a 3-story building,
Mhm.
and most of the Millennium classes are on the second floor. They have their,
District offices are on the first floor.
yeah, and there's a high school computer lab on that floor that is shared by both the high
Yeah.
school and Millennium. So it does coexist, but I don't think it's, facility-wise, we don't have quite
Yeah,
that much space.
Gotcha.
that was my perspective as well. Yeah.
Or that much money.
There's that too.
20 minutes.
All right, so I'll just point out that we are running just about 10 minutes behind.
Thank you.
So if there's no further business on this item, I think we should probably move on. We
Yes,
have
I
a plan
agree.
for the next
So Jackie, over to
steps.
you.
All right, so that brings us to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. So if there's anyone here this evening who wishes to speak about something that's not on our agenda tonight, now is your chance. Please come right on up. And seeing nobody to do that, we can move on to, we're now right on time again.
Yeah.
Review and discussion items.
And we like that.
That's amazing. Oh, I was trained by the best. Thank you, Paul. So, review and discussion items. The first is our facilities assessment, which is the first part of the last part of the facilities master plan, as I understand it. And I believe we've all had a chance to look at it. I don't want to say read it, because it's 450 pages long. 532 pages long. But I think, as we all realized, what we're looking at is a document that contains a lot of detail about some of the information we've been getting bit by bit over the past 6 or 8 months from various updates that we've had about the facilities master plan. But it goes into a level of detail so that it becomes a reference document that we can all, or the facilities folks, more importantly, can turn to see exactly what baseboard should be replaced in what order, what wall needs addressing, where the electrical systems are most efficient. So it's essentially for prioritization. And I believe we have our architect here this evening, but not necessarily to present this. We've had a chance to look at it, so I'm just going to open it up for questions and discussion at this point. And then just the other thing I was going to say is I think the final complete facilities master plan will be here for our approval at the next board meeting, February 11th. Is that what we understand? Okay. So would anyone like to tackle this beast or ask questions about it?
Find it.
Alan, go ahead.
So there were some fairly common issues expressed, needs expressed in some of the issues. I saw pretty commonly that the HVAC in almost all sites need to be improved.
Right.
I've been in the high school, in the library, in the afternoon, at times when you feel as though you're in an oven. So I really appreciate your identifying that need. The same thing I think is true at middle school and all the other sites, I believe. It's pretty consistently a need. The other one seems to be fire safety. The alarm system, the availability of fire service in case there is a fire. There's some question on some sites. I happened to have been at the high school last week on a Tuesday when the fire alarm went off, and it was a real fire situation. And I thought things worked pretty well. It wasn't a big enough fire to require fire service and a truck and all the water and stuff, but the kids got out in a fairly timely manner. The alarm seemed to be working, so. And the high school seemed to be identified as one of those sites. ADA access also seems to be an issue at almost every campus, and if we're going to modernize them, we already know that the campuses we looked at modernizing need significant ADA improvements. One of the ADA issues I had a question about was the casework. I'm not sure what casework means. Is that cabinets and things that are not accepted? Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's cabinetry. And Leo Ray Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cabinetry, and just like with everything else that you have, when you have cabinetry in a classroom or in an office somewhere, you have to have ADA accessible cabinetry, which means you have to cut out the cabinet so someone in a wheelchair can roll up under it, and if you don't have that, you're out of compliance.
Mm. But if that's true in the high school and middle school, you give a pretty positive or a good assessment of the high school and middle school. Those are two new schools, and it's going to be hard to address that at an existing school, start tearing out things. And I don't think probably need to do it? Do we need to do it, or?
As a general overall statement, as you said, the middle school and high school, obviously the newest facilities, they're in pretty good condition overall.
Yeah.
Their primary problem is their HVAC systems, their air systems, and that's something I know that the facilities and Don is working on, and that's high on the list to get those repaired. And there are a couple of options how that can be done, which we can talk about later if you want to get some details. But the rest of the schools, though, have a lot of stuff that needs to be done to them. They do have fire alarm issues. They do have, by current standards, some of them should have fire hydrants on site, and they don't have those.
Yeah.
So you have those kinds of issues that are out there across the board that's pretty well enumerated in the document we have here. So
Yeah, it is. Very, very well done. I appreciate the way the document is written. It's very readable. It's long, but the tables, you identify the ranking, what the ranking means and things like that is right there. It's very readable, so I appreciate the quality of the work you provided us.
And we should point out, while you're mentioning that,
Yeah.
Alan, just that it isn't 532 pages of text. We have
That's true.
photographs of the situations of the various sites with descriptions, very well-written descriptions. I think it is an accessible document, and it is available currently. There's a link on our website
Right.
to the document, as well as, to the site that will ultimately contain the entire master plan. Sorry.
I felt
go ahead.
like I could skim it quickly too, and with those tables, I could get a real sense of what the urgent were, and okay. It was,
Just an aside here, when I came in early, Jackie said she was going to give us all a lesson in how to speak into the microphone.
oh,
A lesson, just lean forward and make sure you speak
No, you
directly
did,
in.
but we're not all doing it. We just need a
Yes.
reminder once in a while. I do, I know.
Yes, Jeremy asked us if we
Yeah.
could really work on that this year. He says that when we move away a little bit, it closes down and it doesn't pick up unless we talk directly into the mic.
We should
Thanks,
all
Alan.
have lapel mics.
So a couple of things that I didn't see that we're all aware of is the need for additional classrooms at almost all sites.
yeah, that comes out in the next phase. This is strictly the assessment phase, which is looking at your existing
Existing.
conditions and what is the status of your existing conditions. We've been going through that process now with the next phase, which is actually looking at the master planning and evaluation of what are your needs ongoing and how do we address those. And as said, as mentioned, we'll be bringing that to you at the next meetings.
And then I'm really concerned about the maintenance building. It's not very accessible. It's in terrible shape.
That's Don's home.
I guess Don could tell us more detail.
Somebody will be hurt in that building if we don't do something.
Yes, mainly it's, the building will be okay because it's a stick-built building, so it will perform okay. It's just the contents inside the building, which will dump out inside the building, then we won't be able to get in there and do anything and access tools and et cetera. So that's the main deal with that building and storage space as well.
Things that will fall on people's heads in an earthquake. I really appreciated the tour I had. If you're in there, so don't go in there.
Well, most of the time they're not in there, right? They're out.
Yeah.
And then I got a sneak preview, I think, at the last steering committee meeting of some of the proposals for building improvements at the high school in particular.
Yeah, we've
We'll
been
talk
going.
about that next time, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
excited to see the little theater is recommended for
It's on the list.
significant remodel.
Yeah, we've been going through it with the steering committee. We've gone through all the schools thus far with the steering committee, with some of the recommendations, gotten the input from them, and so we're now going back and putting all that together.
And then will we see a cost estimate for some of this HVAC improvements that we're recommending? We've got cost estimates for replacement of schools
Yes.
for Marin and Ocean View, but we're looking, and we actually got a separate estimate for just doing seismic as well for those two schools, but will we be getting a separate estimate for the HVAC improvements, the fire?
Well, the HVAC, we actually are working with, we'll be working with Don on that, because that's a very specific item, and master planning usually isn't that detailed, but in this case, we will be touching on that because of the fact that it is one of the items that's brought up as something that's going to happen in relatively shorter time period than some of the other things that are recommended on the plans.
oh, good.
So Don, do we have a budget for that?
On the items that we can do in-house, we will do in-house. And then I'm looking at possible Prop 39 funds for
Oh, excellent.
some of those items as well.
So Charlie's here to tell us about Prop 39 grants.
I see, so you're taking that into consideration in your application and all that, then?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Yeah, the whole idea is to try not to encroach.
Microphone,
You're supposed to
microphone.
yell into the mic too, but.
Sorry. The idea is not to encroach on the general fund as much as possible. So, looking at everything is on the board, and especially the new Prop 39 monies that'll be available.
So it looks as though with the HVAC, there may be some additional duct work required, but a lot of what you recommend is just replacing the old fans and compressors and.
Maybe. What we're looking at, we may be able to, or someone may be able to, not us, we don't do that work, to be able to recommission those units. And so that's another thing that will be looked at as an option, in which someone will come back through and really try to see if they can be reprogrammed and recalibrated so they actually work the way they're supposed to work. And if not, they may require some compressors, and they may require some things to be replaced, some parts and pieces to be replaced. The overall system is basically in a decent system, in pretty good shape, but it's just not working properly. And there's several mitigating factors that occur there. So there should be ways to actually fix that, essentially.
But for instance, as the library at the high school, is that going to require additional ductwork? Is there any air conditioning service in that?
Yes, there is. Actually, it already has actual mechanical cooling to chill that area. So that is one place commissioning will definitely work. The high school actually has HVAC units that'll actually mechanically cool. The middle school doesn't. So, but the thing is, the ones at the high school are only on spaces that don't have windows.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Albright, for those of us who don't have a really clear understanding of this, I think people have been very interested in us trying to access, including Mr. Blanchard, who's in the audience, but a number of people have asked about the Prop 39 money. So can you make clearer for someone like me how, if you're applying for the monies, because they're supposed to be aimed at energy efficiency and all that, how the work we would do on the HVA system in the high schools is related to energy efficiency? Just a sentence or two, if you could summarize.
Yeah, it is a direct expense, because when the units, and they're not even really cooling units. We only mainly have heating units. But when they were put in 1999, 2000, the newer machines coming out now are much more efficient.
I see.
So
Okay.
that with the SEER rating, it's called the SEER rating on it, is much higher. So they just work much more efficiently, and so that's where you get your savings from.
Okay, thank you so much.
And just for the public, we have applied for the planning grant for $130,000, correct?
Oh, good.
And we're very,
That's under,
Prop 39.
thank you.
Paul?
I just had a couple of, to get away from HVAC for a minute. Just a couple of minor observations. One of the things I was really trying to look at in here was the board has already voted to proceed, at least to the next step with Marin School, but not to proceed immediately with Ocean View. So I was looking at comparisons of the two schools, and I just had a couple of minor observations. One is another reason to think about going ahead and tearing down Marin. I didn't see noted in your report, but that single-story, almost flat roofs, it's very common to drive by that school and see kids up there on the roof. And that's a real present danger to the kids, and of course causes damages to the roofs. So replacing that with a two-story, much less accessible building would be a great boon. The other thing, at Ocean View, I noticed there are a couple of things. This isn't an all-inclusive list, but I noticed play equipment safety surfacing not safe damaged or not present, toxic plants that are right next to the school gardens that should be removed. Those sorts of things we certainly should take out of this plan and not wait until we rebuild Ocean View, but take care of right away. So I really appreciated the level of detail in the plan, and that you did pull out a lot of things like that, cracked sidewalks that people could trip on and all those sorts of things. And anything that we could fix without triggering the entire ADA compliant upgrade, we should certainly take care of, not wait until we have a full plan to rebuild Ocean View.
Good point.
And the point about the 2 stories is important. A few years ago, I was crawling around on the roof of Ocean View, actually, looking at all the copper that had been.
You're up there too, huh?
Oh, yeah. As well as the high school. All the copper that had been stolen from the HVAC. You know, it's
really?
too accessible. And the amount of money we had to pour into replacing that.
That's a constant problem throughout the country, but throughout the Bay Area.
But especially, an accessible roof.
Yeah, maybe we can replace the copper with gold. Maybe that would
Probably would be cheaper.
Well, how are we doing? Do we have other questions, Alan?
Yeah, just
Sure.
kind of a detail question, I guess another detail question. At the middle school, I have here that like the fire coverage, I think, received a rank of 8, yet we recommended replacing it. I mean, it seems to be pretty good, but yet we're recommending replacing it. Can you remember if there's a reason for that?
I'm not, actually, I would have to check that,
Okay.
because I remember one of the things they talked about, the coverage was that based on, again, everything has changed in terms of the code. So when that was built, it met all the current codes.
Yeah.
But the coverage ratios are very different now than what they were before in terms of fire. And also there are some very specific things about if you have any like beams or anything protrude down more than, I think it's 12 inches, then you also have to have additional heads within those areas. So there's a lot of different code requirements that are in there now that weren't there 5, 6 years ago, or even 10 years ago in this case.
So the rank of 8 indicates it's functioning very well pretty well for what it was originally intended, but it needs to be replaced because it's out of date.
Yeah, and again, it's some of these cases, not always does that have to be replaced, but if you were to do work there, it would need to be replaced. That's sort of the operative word that goes along with it. It isn't like you need to go in and just replace it just because. So as work is done there, just like we talked about previously with the other schools, as work is done there, then you need to then bring it back up and make those replacements at that point in time.
All right. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, would anyone else like to come up? We certainly can have questions from the audience. No? Well,
And for those who want to print this out, it ends up looking something like this.
My printer's been going all night.
That's
No,
what
I didn't.
500 pages looks like.
People shouldn't be intimidated, though. They could just skim through those tables and you can get the basic idea, and you did a good job, and we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd just like to comment that this process is extremely important for me in maintenance operations and facilities, because what it does is it gets into the details of what I need to do, and it allows me to look at all of the work that we have, and it typically spread out over 20 years. And then what I can do is I can prioritize those tasks, the tasks that are most important, and the things that I can do in-house with just our general maintenance money. And then it allows me to look at those items that are going to require more funding and different funding sources. So as I said, Prop 39 is one place that we can, just fortuitous that it happened now, and I could see the high school and the middle school HVAC possibly be funded with that, even though I don't know how much that's going to cost. And the one thing about those two systems is they were intended to bring in fresh air, which is all well and fine as long as the air isn't 90 degrees outside. But when the air is 90 degrees outside, then you're bringing in 90-degree air, and that's what makes it so uncomfortable in the buildings when it gets like that. I think we're okay with the heating part of the system. It's just the air conditioning part, which there really isn't any air conditioning.
Yeah.
Good to hear you're so anxious to deal with this report.
No, we
Yeah.
really appreciate that,
Yeah,
that
Dawn,
you're going
thank
to
you.
find it useful
Right.
and at least be able to do some of the things initially, immediately, even if we have to wait to see down the line when the state finally decides to start giving us more money for schools, but you can at least start on some safety issues too, as Board Member Black said.
Absolutely, and the safety issues we take care of. As a matter of fact, I did 2 playground mats, one in Cornell and one in Ocean View this last summer. We didn't replace them. We did what's called a recap. So basically, they took off the edge and put a new one on. So it's actually thicker than a single one.
Excellent.
Great. So it won't just be gathering dust, this document. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you both,
Thank
Leo
you.
and Don.
Thank you.
All right. See what's up next. Oh, yeah, we have our field trip quarterly report.
Take your time.
Good evening, Board of Education. I'm Peter Parenti, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. As soon as my computer warms up here, I'm going to have a quick report for you on the field trips for this quarter. This is just a brief report on the field trips that were taken in the quarter September 23rd to December 8th, and I present it to you in a numerical format. Got lots of documents back in my office if you're ever interested in more detail about where we're going and where teachers are taking children and how they're connected to standards and instruction, which they are doing an outstanding job. Our teachers have to work really hard to make field trips happen. They take a lot of effort to organize volunteers, funding sources, agencies that are out there providing our kids with those experiences, transportation. It is a lot of work. And yet, our teachers take them a lot. We have quite an even spread across the school sites. The first part of your board packet gives you a little information about how the second quarter, you're going to see these columns change over time when we get to the third and fourth quarters. In the first quarter, we only had 1 field trip because it was just the very start of the school year. But in the second quarter, we've got all of the numbers here. Cornell took 11, Marin took 14, Ocean View took 11, Albany Middle took 13, Albany High took 16, McGregor took 0. And then broken down by grade level, and I do have a note of correction there when I get there. Broken down by grade level, you can see the numbers spread out again. There's a little spike at 4th grade. They took lots of field trips, especially in December. I do want to correct this, and I'll have this noted in the board packet or the board minutes, that this is supposed to be a 36. So year to date would be 36. And now we get up to our perfect math of 65 total.
Perfect. One question I had was that number.
Was that number? Any one of you, I would have loved that question like a day or 2 or 3 ago, but you guys had a big facilities packet to review as well, right? Yeah, we found that number this afternoon. So, any questions or comments, things you want to know more about? I could prepare another report for you later.
I don't necessarily need to know anything about this, but, you know, in the past, there have been concerns about sufficient drivers and volunteers because of the new paperwork and all that, and we haven't really heard much about that recently. So generally, you feel like and I noticed there's equitable numbers amongst the elementary school campuses, so I guess that data speaks for itself. Do you know if people are using buses more, or you know, paying for buses more, or are they still using parent drivers? What's your general impression?
Impression off the cuff. That the volunteer level implemented it around the time that I was hired as the Albany Middle School principal. And there was an enormous amount of effort put forward for parents to document lots of what they needed to document to get registered in. And a lot of that work gets carried over year to year that they don't have to redo. And then they do have to update things like driver's insurance if they're a volunteer level 2 or 3, if they're going to be driving. There's a number of things they have to update, but only those things need to be updated.
Right.
So I think there was an initial, oh my gosh, every time I try to get field trips taken care of, I've got 6 parents who have to go through an entire process. This is our second, maybe even third year, where many of our parents, as they matriculate up through the grades, have a lot of that work still done. There's a nice database that's maintained by HR that shows the level, the status, and every individual document that they have on file. And so the only things that need to be updated are automobile insurance, driver's licenses if they expire. My general impression is it's still very difficult work, worth it, but very difficult work, but a lot of the parents come prepared.
Please tell the staff that I really appreciate, I'm a parent still, right? So I do all this and did it initially, but I very much appreciate the being reminded of specifically what I needed and how on top of it, I see some of the school secretaries being about making sure that, I bring the right insurance form and all that, and it just feel like that it was extra work and everyone's handling it very well. So please pass that on.
I will.
Alan?
Peter, while you're here, this is a little off topic, but I was fortunate enough to attend the Ocean View presentation of core curriculum that you gave. I thought it was fantastic. You engaged the parents, and the parents were very responsive with good, intelligent questions. So I'm really pleased to see how this core curriculum and strategic planning is being implemented. Thank you.
Thank
It'll
you.
be very exciting to see it.
Yeah. Ocean View parents were really outstanding. All of them have been up to this date, as we are shifting gears then. That was the final in my first rollout. Ocean View was the last group that I was able to get scheduled onto their PTA cycles. What I'm finding is that it just keeps raising a lot more good questions. Ocean View had lots of good questions, a very engaging group, a lot of fun.
So when their kids start doing core curriculum, they're going to be engaged. I think they'll understand and
We
appreciate
better keep on topic here, I think.
I think Kim has a question.
Sure.
Are you going to ask why those don't add up to the number below? Because I was wondering the same thing. There are only 2 field trips taken from 8th to...
I will find out. Why is that not math? Why that? 300, 300, and then that is 10, 0.
Yeah.
So I will take full responsibility for the math, even though I do depend on conglomerate reports coming in from 6 different campuses, and I will do a better job to make sure I just cross-check all the math first. I'll get back to you on why those discrepancies exist now. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Maybe you can correct the numbers, put it on the website so
Sure.
everybody can see it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, why is that a 10 when up above it says only 3? Figure it all out. I will get back to you guys.
This rings a bell, and I think it has something to do with how they're counted if more than one more than one grade takes the field trip together. They don't count it for that one, for either grade, and you end up with 0. Because I seem to remember this came up in a previous year.
Yeah,
several times.
Yeah.
Several times, right? And every year we have to...
So it's, it's hard to account for multi-grade field trips, which are, happen
Well,
all the
I can
time.
also easily cross-reference. I have a binder, paper copies, and electronic copies as well that I can just go through by site and count out that way.
Sure sounds like fun to
Do
I
it,
know.
do it like FTE, say they took 0.3 field trip.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yep.
Good. So we're on to action items.
Jonathan, actually, I think we were going to do the advertisement as a review and discussion.
No, it was an action item.
We ended up putting it on for action, yeah.
Okay.
Item D, I believe.
That's what.
Assuming that we'll have some direction to give at the end of it.
Okay.
So I put it as D. So we'll have 4 action items. So the first is to approve a contract with a research firm, Traumatola Advisors, for opinion surveys about tax measure planning. And we've all had a chance to look at that. Lori, is there anything you want to add to what's in the packet, or?
No, No, pretty
have-
much, the background covers the, all the information. There were two proposals, and one of the things that it doesn't state is the other proposal was from, I'm probably going to butcher their name, Fairbank, Maslin, Mullen, Metz, and Associates. So there were two submittals from the RFP.
Okay, and this was chosen as the better of the two? The less expensive of the two?
Yes, I was not involved in that process, so
Okay.
I'm a little skeptical, but I'm guessing this was the better of the two since it's being presented.
So the numbers don't exactly add up, or I can't
Did you
figure out
notice
how
that
they...
too?
Yeah, I did. So one set of numbers adds up to 30,000?
30,160, and
There's a 1,600 discrepancy.
Jackie and I were talking about that, and I really don't know. I hate to say it, I'm guessing we will need to call them, see which number is correct. I couldn't find the additional 1,000 anywhere because I thought
couldn't either.
perhaps somewhere buried in the contract there was an additional $1,000. But I agree, the total contract for all the language is 30,160 instead of the 31,160. So
Okay, so
I
it-
truly, honestly, I'm not sure which one is correct, whether, because it is their contract, whether one of their numbers is off in the detail or whether the number is off in the summary.
So, I mean, two flat fees, payment of
Exactly.
13,000 is 26,000 plus the other cost.
Exactly.
I mean, I'd
Well-
rather keep the 1,106.
Right, and we'll need to
$60.
verify with them which is.
Not me.
Right, which is the correct
So,
number.
so when we actually do our action tonight, what,
Yeah, it's tough.
right, what should we approve? 30,160?
I believe the 30,160.
I agree.
Because I read their contract language several times trying to ferret out that
Okay.
additional $1,000, and I could find it nowhere.
So we should
Be
revise
specific.
this and specifically
Yeah.
approve 30,160, and if they need that extra $1,000, they'll have to come back and.
Exactly.
Approve the extra money.
And
So I'll-
explain.
I have one more thing, I think. I can't remember.
You want me to?
Did anyone have any questions about the services they'll be providing?
I have a related question.
Related to the services? Go ahead.
Well, it's going to come as a request at the end, but this is a good place to put it in. There are a lot of items to go into this parcel tax, I think, not just Measure I, and I hope sometime we're going to be talking about expanding mental health services, continuing Measure I items, reducing class size, and we haven't had that discussion yet, and it's coming up rather quickly, and if we're looking at people who are going to poll, they're going to need that information.
This 30,160 is coming from the general fund. This is leading up, this is just to get us to the point where we put the measure on the ballot. At that point, the district no longer pays for it. It goes to a private committee, right? The district can't pay for services
That's right.
involved in running a campaign.
Correct, correct.
So this is not the total amount that the services will cost, it's just the amount the district is paying for it.
Correct.
Okay.
And
In
it's-
addition to the election costs.
And there's a subcontractor involved, True North
True North.
Research.
Right, they do the polling.
So, apparently they all work together. Otherwise, it wouldn't be written that way.
Well, I guess the reason that I asked earlier, if anyone had questions about the services, is I'm not really sure I understand two of the services. Evaluating our financial needs, is that something we need to hire someone to do? Or does that service include something more than is just obvious from the description of it? And I guess
That's kind of what I was addressing.
that's what you're interested in, yeah.
And again, we're stuck with the timeline because if we're looking at, June election,
We have to move along.
we have to
Yeah.
move
Right.
along,
Right.
so.
We need the polling data, there's no question about that, and I think that this was consistent with the cost estimate we received earlier, just off the, back of the envelope estimate of what it would cost to get some polling data, and that's really what we need, and that's included here. So I'm inclined to go along with it. I just wish we had a little more information about what what it includes. And unfortunately, our superintendent is out ill, and we wish her a speedy recovery, but we don't have that information.
I mean, I wish this group was here so that we could ask them
Yeah.
questions. Again, that's a very good question as far as, financial needs. I mean, we know what our financial,
Right.
depending on things that Alan's talking about, we're going to ask the public for more money for reduced class size or for sports or whatever we're looking at.
Right. Now, part of putting this polling together is going to be consulting with the district on, or I'm just assuming, consulting with the district on the types of things that we might need, and maybe this is what A and B are, in order to gauge the public's response to costs with specific items, costs for just general school services, and so on.
I guess I'd like to ask Lori your opinion on, is this something you feel comfortable with?
I'm comfortable with it. I agree with some comments that have been made. I wish it had a little more information. I wish it had maybe a detailed timeline.
Actually, there's another, I just noticed this. I guess I was overwhelmed with the facilities report. This actually states, provide recommendations to client regarding electoral viability of placing a new bond measure on the ballot.
Right.
Including tax rate, bond amount, projects to include timing of election and ballot language. This is a parcel tax.
Yeah, this is not
Page
a
141.
bond.
So we would need to reword that. We don't want to sign a contract for a bond measure when we're trying to get a
No, we certainly don't.
No, we don't.
I'm glad you caught that.
Yes.
So I think if we pass this, we need to put some provisos in that part's written, that we want a timeline.
I have another suggestion. So it's the 14th now. On the 29th, we will be meeting again anyway.
Right.
That's a special meeting. Could we take action on this contract at that time?
Yeah, I think the timeline is included in B, the detailed project work plan. Would that not be a timeline? But,
Yeah.
To develop a detailed project.
Well, we can certainly consider passing it now with some specific instructions for amendments.
right, well, certainly, and E calls for activities of an architect.
And even though they're not here, I do remember that people who went forth and became, I think, started to participate in the committee itself were very eager to get started on getting some polling data because of the very short timeline to the June.
I believe they're meeting tonight as we're meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
well,
that's why we're not.
Yes, but we didn't send out a separate RFP for polling. We just sent one out for.
Well, I
All
guess
right,
what I'm saying is I don't think we should wait too long. So, I mean, I do like the idea of changing the amount, and I do like the idea of clarifying that it is for a parcel tax. But
We could ask for some clarification and some modification and changes of things that are obviously incorrect. And if folks are willing to get together for half an hour next week and on a special meeting, just ratify it if we like what we see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly amenable to that.
Or passing it with the provisos, I'm fine.
Well, we have two clear items. Any place that says bond, replace it with parcel tax. Change the number to what it actually adds up to.
which is 30,160.
Right.
3,160, is that correct?
3160.
30160.
Okay. And other specific changes?
Well, if there are services, I'm hearing some of you saying you want a little bit more specific list of services. So
Before agreeing to it?
did we?
I mean,
What was the RFP? Did we approve the RFP?
We did.
We did.
So the service list should be the same as what was in the RFP.
I can't, it's
That's
got to
true.
be in the minutes somewhere.
All we need to do, it would seem, would be to request that the contract language reflect the RFP.
Yep, I'm just trying to see if I could pull up the RFP now. I might have it.
Here you go.
Oh, do you have it?
Ooh, quick.
Yeah.
pass it down, or I can
Oh,
just,
yeah, it's just one copy.
okay.
Yeah, why
um,
don't you just look at it, Jen?
So scope of work, research prior opinion polls and/or survey, compile existing, sorry. Yeah, so we have research prior opinion polls and/or survey. Prior to meeting with the representative of the district, prepare a draft survey instrument. Preparation of a draft survey instrument. Following the completion of a draft survey instrument, the district and the consultant will meet to review the draft survey instrument and review survey methodologies. So it sounds like it'll be fairly much under the control of the district. What's in here notwithstanding, it's intended to provide what we want.
It is, maybe perhaps, because when I was just glancing at that, some of the
Yeah.
things that it said the proposal needed to include were, and it has a list of items, so perhaps if you also had a copy of the proposal to go along with the contract, that would give you more information about what exactly.
Well, isn't
they're
the contract include the proposal, shouldn't it?
Well, I think,
It seems like the services provided should be the proposal.
And it sounds like,
does.
if what you just read, if that, my memory serves me right, basically, we want a survey to go out
Yeah.
to show us, and that's what True North Research is doing for $17,160. Why are we
well, because I
doing
think
anything
that
beyond
says
that?
it needs to include clients, the outcomes of other parcel taxes, those sorts of things that probably are in the proposal but aren't in this contract. Isn't there a list of items?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
that's about the prior surveys. What are the results in other Bay Area school districts? And I think also to put together a survey instrument, you need to have some plan as to what questions you want to ask. And that's not something that the survey, I would think True North doesn't do that. They conduct the survey that's given to them, if I understand this correctly.
But item B says they evaluate clients' financial facilities and program needs,
Yeah.
which says if our bond, or our parcel tax committee comes up with a list of needs, they would evaluate those. My experience has been that we develop what our
Pass this down.
wish list is. And that may be a $500 parcel tax, and then we go out and ask we tell them what the parcel tax is for, and ask them what they're willing to pay, what level, 100, 200, 300.
I think we should ask Charlie, because my
I was
memory
going to
is,
open it up to the audience as well.
my memory of, I was new on the board the last time around, and maybe you have some memory on how we conducted this last time.
Not to put you on the spot.
Mr. Blanchard. No, he was falling out of seat anyway.
I don't remember is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Thank you. You're too good at reading body language there. I actually came here this evening from a meeting of the parcel tax group.
excellent.
Oh, good.
And so I'm definitely not representing them. This is just my own personal observations and comments. They were very much looking forward to having a professional survey done and felt very strongly that that was needed.
Right.
I heard one person comment that that the two firms together had complementary strengths. And I have not read the contract, so I can't speak to that personally. But one comment was that the two together brought more than either one alone.
Okay.
And I think there was a general concern about schedule. As somebody noted, it's tight.
Yes.
And there was a recognition that, getting a survey going, we'd have to get the results back in February because you're going to have to go to the county, I think, in early March with language. So those were just some of the general comments. I think that there was a little bit of a sense that this would help clarify matters that the group at this point is kind of in a holding pattern.
I see.
And that getting going on the survey would provide some much needed information. There were a couple specific questions that came up. Obviously, the amount is an important survey question, so the group has certainly considered what dollar amount would be needed to replace Measure I, considering it would probably have to be a flat
Right.
tax this time around rather than the existing split roll tax. And I think the group would probably welcome some input into the process of designing survey questions and offering some ideas on survey questions. Those were just my observations. Again, it's not meant to represent the group in any way. That's basically what we kind of did before, I think, in trying to put surveys out. I don't remember what was done in 2005. Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and I will repeat again that it was also my impression that that there is some urgency if we want to get this done by June, and I do appreciate everyone's due diligence in looking at this, but I did read about the group and their background, and they're certainly very reputable and have a lot of experience. So I think we should, with the corrections.
Is that a motion, Pat?
Yes, that is.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Because I was
Very clear.
looking at this.
Yeah.
Given the conversations that we've had and my sense that the community who are interested in participating in the parcel tax feel that we need to move expediently in order to be able to do this effectively, I move that we approve this contract with the change in the amount to $30,160, and with all mentions of a bond measure being changed to parcel tax.
I'll second.
I just, before we vote on that, I was just looking at the RFP. There's a lot of specifics in the RFP about how the survey will be conducted. Nothing about what the consultant will be doing other than that. So there's nothing in the contract specifying what will be done with respect to the survey, but there is other stuff in here that we probably didn't think of. So this contract does not seem to cover the services being provided by the subcontractor, I guess is what I'm saying.
What do you mean?
The subcontractor is conducting the survey. The RFP largely describes how that should be done. The contract doesn't say anything except that the contractor will oversee the development of the survey.
And the subcontractor, North Research, will provide those services.
But the
It
descriptions.
doesn't say what services.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have a copy of the contract between True North Research
Right.
and Tromatola. And that should be an appendix of this contract, and I don't want to vote on the contract without seeing that.
Okay, so you want to meet next week, because we don't have any time to waste then, right? But next week, we have the superintendent stakeholder meetings. Is that on Tuesday night and Wednesday night?
Tuesday night.
It's Tuesday night. For some reason, I thought that,
Tuesday night for the community.
Yeah, we don't need to be there.
We also
We-
have all our individual.
We have all sorts of things, but as Ron said, we could just meet for a half an hour. It doesn't have to be a full meeting. It's just
and we don't, and we, okay.
if the rest of you want to approve this, you don't need my vote, but I can't vote for it without seeing the full contract.
No, that's fine. I mean, I appreciate that you want to do this, but we need to do it by next week. And it is a very difficult schedule, so that but we need just a majority of the board there, right? Right? We don't need, so,
Right.
because we're going to have to establish a time when each of us can be there. So we'll make that work. But then I need to know what is it that you want before you can approve it?
Well, the changes that you stated, and the contract that the polling company
North Research, yeah.
is making with Tromatola to make sure that it reflects That's what we specified in the RFP.
Can we add language to this contract saying that the will oversee the process as specified in the RFP?
I'd vote for that, yeah.
Okay, so I,
That
that's
would,
fine.
that would clarify,
That
so
would-
that.
that would
so
take care of
they'd
it.
be breaking the contract if they don't oversee it the way.
That would be fine. I'd go with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if we do that, we need to give, how many hours of notice do we need to give before we,
Well, I think Ron's suggestion is we can take care of it tonight.
Ron
Oh.
just made a suggestion that would allow us to.
I'm sorry.
In other
vote
words,
on
we'll
it.
add some language stating that that when this company, Tramontola, oversees the polling, it would be overseeing the process as described in the RFP.
oh, thank you.
Yes,
What do you think of
just- I think that's fine. We'll
Yeah.
just add that to item C, oversee development of voter
See,
opinion research.
I'm
and
guessing that
analysis of
these
results
folks slapped it.
As described in the RFP.
template,
Yeah.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, clearly they did.
It was
Yeah.
over break, it was,
which really disappoints me in a way.
well,
$31,000, you could at least spend a couple hours and write the contract properly.
yeah. All right, so then Pat, would you be willing to amend your motion to include the third change, just?
Yes, okay, so, I'll need a little help with this. So, do you want to make the motion?
I'll amend the motion to state that we will approve the contract at $30,160 with all references to bond measure as a parcel tax.
Okay,
Change the
And
motion.
including, and somebody will have to write the exact language, the stipulation that what Tramontolas, I don't have the line there, will oversee and coordinate the activities of,
Oversee development of voter opinion research and analysis of results
Yeah.
as specified in.
as specified in the
the
request for
proposals.
proposals.
excellent. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jackie, did you get that?
I got all of it except for the very last part that you spoke very quickly about overseeing.
Oversee development of
That's
voter
item E.
opinion research and analysis of results as specified in the request for proposals.
Right, that's the key.
Polling services provided by True North Research. So it's just adding that little segment
That phrase.
Excellent idea.
To item C in the services.
on item C.
Okay,
And you can, I'm going to be on.
do you need one of us to send you an email with that, or did you get?
Thank you, that would be
Okay,
wonderful.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Board
Somebody-
Member Black.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I might not be around tomorrow or something.
All right. Well, let's see, we were ahead, now we're just a little behind.
Talk fast.
But not too far, so we're doing all right. The next item is to approve a resolution on Board of Education member term limits. And this is a resolution that I believe Paul has worked on.
I recognize the writing.
Would you like to introduce it or perhaps read it into the record, Paul?
I'm in the middle of an email here. I can't read it into the record because I don't have it up on my screen at
Do
the
you want me
moment.
to read it?
Sure,
Okay.
if you'd like to do that.
All right. Resolution 2013-1409, Board of Education Term Limits Elimination. Whereas the Albany, California Board of Education operates under the city charter of the City of Albany, and whereas the city charter limits members of the board to 2 consecutive terms of 4 years each, and whereas the job of a member of the Board of Education is highly technical, requiring knowledge of educational policy, school finance, school administration, labor relations, and other fields. And whereas it takes several years for a typical member to gain sufficient expertise to become effective. And whereas professional development and team training over many years improve the function of the board. See, for example, DeVaries and O'Brien, 2012, 8 Characteristics of Effective School Boards from the Center for Public Education. And whereas research into effective school boards finds that stability of the board is very important for good governance, with the typical member of an effective board having served 10 years or more. see, for example,
We could stipulate that there are several references, if you
thank
like,
you.
rather than reading them all.
several references which you can refer to. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Albany Unified School District Board of Education requests that the Albany City Council ask the Charter Review Committee to consider removing the term limit from elected members of the school board. And further, be it resolved that if the committee concludes that elimination of term limits for board members would benefit the community, the current members of the Albany School Board may be excluded from any such change if the committee or city council find the resulting benefit of reducing perception of self-interest on the part of the current board members is greater than the benefit provided by eliminating term limits for all members, both current and new, passed and adopted by the governing board of the Albany Unified School District on this 14th day of January 2014 by the following vote.
Okay, so the background is that the board already discussed and by consensus decided that we did want to proceed with the request to the city to remove term limits for board members. But the city doesn't operate the same way the school board does, in that they need to have a formal proposal before anything is considered decided. It's not an action unless there's a formal vote. So they wanted to see something formal from the school board requesting that they pass it on to the Charter Review Committee to consider it. So this is that proposal. This would not change the charter. This would only request that the City Council have the Charter Review Committee decide whether they wanted to change the city charter, and if so, they will come up with wording that will go in the ballot, and it would have to go to a public vote. The last paragraph, I worded originally a little bit differently, but this is wording that came from Preston Jordan, who suggested, it's a little bit convoluted, but I think you can follow the logic there.
Yeah.
The idea is that we believe that removal of term limits is a good thing and would benefit the community. But we're willing to not be involved. The current board is willing to not be involved in that if it would reduce the chance that the public would think that we were doing something that was self-serving.
Self-serving, exactly.
Because really, it's my personal belief that it is the right thing to do for the community, and I'm not looking to be a lifelong board member. I just think that it would be good to have a longer institutional memory on the school board and greater expertise developed over years that it takes to develop such expertise. And, you know, I find I'm learning every day more about education and becoming, I hope, a more effective board member. And, you know, at the time I'm finished being on the board, I'll probably just be getting to be a really effective board member, and then I'll be termed out. So anyway, I think that I spoke enough.
So I want to thank you for working on this. I mean, I also agree that it is a very good idea, and I also agree that that doesn't mean that I personally want, to serve indefinitely. But I think that for the community itself, and particularly for Albany, we're small. I think it would strengthen the school district. So I move. Do I need to make a motion?
Is there any comment from the audience?
Yes, that's a
Although
good idea.
our audience has dwindled, but I do want to make sure we provide that opportunity.
Thank you, President Knight.
There's a comment from a board member.
And, and Alan, please. I mean, it's okay to have, can I just briefly interrupt? It is okay to have a motion and then to continue our conversation. In fact, it's quite common. We tend to just assume the motion is the beginning of the vote, but in fact, we can have the motion. But go ahead, Alan.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
There isn't yet, but we're about to make one, and it would be okay if we had made one. I'm just pointing that out.
I don't exactly remember the consensus that
Well, it should be
we
in the
had
minutes
previously, but
I do.
I'm still inclined to favor term limits to allow an opportunity for others to provide a fresh perspective on school issues. Under Albany's term limits, a board member could run again after a 2-year break, which might allow the board member to also gain a fresh perspective. I believe our mayor, Peggy Thompson, has done this on the city council. It is unfortunate that incumbency has such a strong influence in elections. And one of the concerns I have that we kind of get entrenched with continuous philosophies of education going on and on and on. Elections for many important government leaders have term limits by choice of the voters. Paradoxically, I support the right of the voters to choose how to conduct their elections, but I have difficulty supporting this resolution. I think it would better come from the community rather from the board, and I recognize Paul's concern. It's a legitimate concern that it appears that the board is just trying to justify their own.
Well, I don't know how many members of this current board are really interested in
My
going
guess
any
is-
further than their terms.
My guess is
I just
none.
want to live as long as my term.
I'm also concerned that we have difficulty getting candidates for school board.
Another
A
issue.
couple of times we've had to appoint board members, and we have 3 board members who are currently appointed, not elected by the.
Well, thank you for your.
You're welcome.
Your perspective, and I would like to make a motion to approve resolution,
2013-1409.
that's what I
I'm
meant.
helping you.
I'll second.
And I'll just chip in one final comment before I ask for a vote on that, which is, observing school boards in California, you see that, in fact, very few of them have term limits. And they have a certain amount of turnover. They have some people who stay on for quite some time and serve their communities. But I feel like in this community, we are small enough and aware enough of our schools. It's kind of almost the purpose of Albany is the schools in a sense. That if there were a board member, if the public felt that the board wasn't moving things along appropriately, that they would know to vote the bums out and put some new people in. So I'm comfortable with this, and I'm comfortable with requesting it. So having said that, I'll just ask for a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Probably need a roll call.
Roll call.
A roll call
I'll
vote,
ask for a
please.
roll call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Student Board Member Chen.
Here?
Board Member,
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Board Member Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Board Member Lowe.
Aye, and just to confirm, because sometimes we don't explain things very clearly, again, you are allowed to vote if you choose, and it is always advisory. We listen to it.
Right.
So thank you for your participation.
Board Member Black.
Aye.
Vice President Maris.
No.
President Knight.
Yes. All right. So, sorry, jumping back to the beginning. We're on to our third action item, and this is a request to approve $25,000 in matching funds for Safe Routes to School, a Safe Routes to School project at Marin Avenue and Curtis Street. There's a little bit of background to that that's explained here. Do you have additional background to provide?
I don't. I believe this has come to you before with a review and discussion earlier on, and I believe the project has been completed.
Now, the matching funds specifically are for the project that has been completed because there is additional work to be done at those intersections. There's the Curtis.
Yeah, the Curtis isn't done yet.
Curtis Street has not been done. So there are, I think it's an ongoing process, and this is really.
The portion, perhaps, is the sidewalk completed?
No.
Not on
No.
Curtis
No.
and Sonoma.
No, only in front of the school. So the major intersection change was made last summer, but there's more to be done, and I think the city is feeling like it's a huge benefit to our schools, and that maybe we could just kick in a little bit. In fact, what they're asking is quite modest. $25,000 out of a $330,000 plus project, so, which is still ongoing.
So does it make sense, is that comfortable taking that out of the general fund?
I am, but I will need a copy of the grant and, all the backup documentation. Otherwise, it would appear to be a gift of public funds without any
Right.
backup. So
Excellent.
I'll request that from them so that we just have that for the auditors, because they will ask.
I mean,
Thank you, Assistant
the work has
Superintendent.
been a great benefit to the school. Sort of seems late to be have this come to us, but I guess, and I don't know how. I guess it was $100,000 cost, and so we're matching half of that. Or no, the original budget was 330 plus whatever. Yeah. So I'll move to approve the $25,000 matching funds for Safe Routes.
All right, Alan, you have a question?
So I'm in favor of this kind of relationship with the city and paying for something that clearly benefits the district. It's not clear to me, does anyone know what sort of bulb out is going to appear on that corner of Curtis and Marin? I guess it's the southeast corner.
There's a little
There's
drawing.
already a
there.
bulb out, and that bulb out contains some kind of a little walkway in the middle of it.
I think it's currently an island, and
Well, there's a small island, that's
Yeah.
right.
and
Does that go away, and then we have a better bulb out, or what?
well, I don't want to say I'm sure, but if it resembles the other intersection change, the island would be removed from that corner, and it would then
Yeah, and I think that
bulb
would be
out entirely.
a
And
good
that
thing to do.
Yeah. It would slow traffic down around that corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just an awkward tripping hazard for anybody the way it is
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the $25,000 in matching funds for Safe Routes to School project at Marin and Curtis? Say aye.
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 All right, then. And that brings us to our final action item, which we added earlier in the evening on the grounds that it came to our attention after the publication of the agenda, and that it needs action immediately, and that is to approve the advertising for the superintendent position, which is something that needs to get rolling. So we've seen ad copy from Ray and Associates, and there were, I believe, some suggestions for changes, which we should get on the record now.
So let me just give a little intro.
Yeah.
Yes, I spoke, I agree with the changes I saw, but this, and it came from somebody I never heard of, so it sort of, I was taken aback a little bit, but I guess it's somebody who works in their office and was just trying to glean some stuff to throw together. They're specifically looking at what would go into EdCal, and I brought the latest one, which is very typical, so I'm going to just,
Excellent.
I'll send down basically when they advertise for superintendents in EdCal, they'd basically say, X school district is looking for a new superintendent, the ADA is blah, it's located here. It's all they usually put in because there's a brochure that will explain much more of what we're going to develop over the next couple of weeks. Folks who are looking for these kind of jobs will do their own research and really learn or not learn about it. So if you look at the 4 ads that for superintendents, and they're coming from different firms, this is basically what it is. None of them are even in as much detail as this.
Maybe I should read?
You can, yeah.
For the public, so maybe just the first, because we were looking at the first paragraph, right? So,
Pick one of these 4 first.
okay, so actually, several of these don't have paragraphs.
No, not at all.
They just have a representation. So the top of one of these, which is for Delano Union School District, says superintendent, and underneath it, it says competitive salary and excellent benefits package, and then some minimum qualifications. And then another one, which is Sierra Sands Unified School District, gives, just as board member Rosenbaum said, location, Kern County, ADA 5,000, the grade span, K-12, which you would know from Unified, and then it just says superintendent, and then salary, competitive and negotiable, very standard, based on qualifications and experience, blah, blah, blah. The only one that is longer,
That's because it's a principal. superintendent principal.
Oh,
for
yeah,
small
okay,
districts.
okay.
But these are very incredibly typical. I'm comfortable with whatever we want to put in there. One of the points that they, I had a conversation with them today, and it's like, it's just for EdCal, and it's just, it's just going to refer them back. They're going to click on the link, and they're going to see everything that we've come up with. So I don't think it's as big a deal as we're worried about. I look at this every week. I'm just curious, and most administrators do, even retired administrators.
Retired administrators, just for fun. Okay, well, first of all.
You want to know what's out there. I know what a superintendent's job looks like, an assistant superintendent's job. The ads for superintendents are very less specific. I think people don't want to get boxed in or.
Okay, first of all, I appreciate you showing this to me because I did not like the ad that I got.
I saw it.
Because they clearly just took it out of, a website and put it in. So I don't need to add what I needed to replace now that I've seen this.
Good.
I would feel comfortable just putting, using the same format. Superintendent, so we would put the ADA, grade levels kind of redundant. Well, I guess you can put grade levels, but I mean, a unified school district is by its definition a K-12.
By definition, right.
But is there any other, like there's usually like 3 little items there. So you could put the ADA number, which I think is pretty essential. You want to put the county network?
Salary range?
No, that's on the.
Well,
So it's competitive.
Every search firm, and I brought this up when they were here, every search firm apparently, but Ray, just say competitive. And
Say that or negotiable.
Ray, for some reason, is, and I had a problem with that, if you remember, with numbers, but they want folks to actually see the range. We got into, a little discussion about that. I don't agree with them, but it's, we hired them, and that's their format.
Right, but it doesn't have to be in the ad.
Doesn't have to be in the ad.
But it could be in the.
They want it to be in the ad. I can talk to them about it again, or anybody who wants to get together and write this, put down what they wanted. I'm fine with it.
I don't have strong feelings about the compensation part, but now that I've seen the description, I want it to match I want it to be more like what the others are, because you save money, first of all, with less wording, and all the person is doing is looking at it and clicking on to find more information anyway.
So is this ad only for EdCal?
Well, no, I think that goes out to the other things that we specified as well, because we want a national search. I don't look at those, and maybe you have some experience looking at those.
So if it's a national search, do we need to be a little clearer about where we're located? Do you have to say?
That might be why we wanted at least a bigger description.
Right, because the other ads might be more
I
detailed.
mean, because if anybody in another state is looking.
Well, I'm very happy to go with Pat's wording. I have one minor edit to it, if you don't mind.
Isn't it kind of long compared to the other ones? You might want to cut some of it out. So let's read it. Yes, let's read into the record what I had written originally, and if what you.
I have it somewhere.
I changed it a couple times, so if you don't remember this exactly, this is the time to change it. So this actually matches what Ray and Associates, the first sentence is the same. The Albany Unified School District, AUSD, is located in the city of Albany, California. If it's a national search, personally, you just need to clarify it's in California, with a population of approximately 19,000, so I'm talking about the city, okay? I don't know if you want that. Albany is well known for its school district's stellar reputation for supporting, now this is where I've changed it a couple times. So for supporting students' academic achievement, extracurricular activities, and appropriate social and emotional growth for all students. You probably want to monkey with that last sentence a little bit.
Yeah. My only suggestion there is that you said students twice, and it's redundant, so I would just take out the first students.
So Albany is well known for its school district's stellar reputation for supporting students' academic achievement.
No, for supporting academic achievement,
Appropriate social and
emotional growth for all students. You don't need students and students.
Yeah, that's fine. And then I was kind of monkeying around with whether to put in extracurricular activities, but it's up to you. That's just more words and.
No, but I think It might be a little bit confusing when you say population of approximately 19,000.
Because they're going to think
Because
ADA.
they're going to think you're talking about ADA.
Well, I think that if we're going to put a paragraph, and I think above that is going to, you know, Albany Unified School District, ADA,
Whatever.
Bleep, 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 bleep.
Right.
You know,
So you
Superintendent,
could,
Albany Unified School District, Alameda County, ADA, blah, paragraph. I like
paragraph
having
could just,
paragraph.
yeah, I mean, you could leave off the population of approximately
Yeah, why don't we
19,000.
just leave that off?
Just start with Albany is well known for its school district's stellar reputation and for supporting both academic achievement and appropriate social and emotional growth for all students.
Okay, so let me read what it is that we imagine. It would say superintendent at the top, and then we would have we would have descriptions, maybe, so we would have at least the ADA, and then K-12 to indicate the descriptions of the district. Then underneath it, we'd have this brief paragraph. The Albany Unified School District, parentheses, AUSD, is located in the city of Albany, California. Albany is well known, or should we say,
No, that's fine.
okay, Albany is well known for its school district's stellar reputation for supporting academic achievement and appropriate social and emotional growth for all students, and that's it.
That's good.
I like it.
Do you want me to send that to you? Okay.
And send it to me. 'Cause,
Yeah, send it to Ron, and I think Ron has the final word on exactly what it looks like.
What I'll do is, you know, I've been sending everything I put out to Jackie so that I'm not violating Brown Act or anything, so, and she's been really great about getting
Okay,
stuff
so,
out, so.
Since this is an action item, I'll move that we word the advertisement as we've just discussed. Pat to send the exact wording to Jackie.
And Ron.
And Ron.
And what I'll do is
Yeah.
I'll dummy up a format for the ad, as long as I'm not on jury duty for the next month.
Can I ask a question about some of this copy? Because the original ad copy that we saw had a bit more
Underneath
in
it.
there in addition, and I believe Paul sent around suggestions for changes to that section as well. Are we still including that and accepting
What
Paul's
else did it say?
changes?
Because I don't have that written down. I only wrote the little
I have it.
revision.
I would throw out that first paragraph, which is that what Pat replaced, the Albany Unified is responsible for educating blah, 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 because that would be very redundant. The community is very supportive of education. In recent years, voters have approved several bond measures. All of that, I think, is best replaced with Pat's wording.
So then that leaves,
That paragraph is gone. The only
What
other
about the
change
third
was.
paragraph then? The Board of Education seeks an individual, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I left that alone, but I'll leave it up to Ron whether he wants to include that.
would you read that would you read though that into the record so that we could just? see
I
what it
don't
was?
have the
Oh, sorry.
Marcia has a comment.
Especially since you're interested in a national search, you might want to clarify for folks that the city of Albany is located in the San Francisco Bay Area, or give them
Right.
some kind of context. Because
Yeah, we
even
have
in
to put that
Southern
in.
California, people don't know where Albany is.
Right.
So, and I suspect it's going to be even more true for folks outside of the state.
Even on the peninsula, they don't know where Albany is.
Well,
It's not-
Albany Unified
I didn't want to go
District,
there.
Alameda
but
County, San
Even in
Francisco Bay
Berkeley, they
Area.
don't
Yeah,
know
that's
where.
And then the ADA.
Just a thought.
No, I agree.
No, it's good, it's good.
Albany is the northern gateway to Alameda County.
That's right.
Wait a minute, didn't I say that?
I thought
in
it was
the first
Chesapeake.
sentence?
Is San Francisco?
Wait,
Okay.
yeah. okay.
So here's what I
So-
think my plan would be,
Good.
is to take this and, well, we have to decide on that last paragraph or not. Dummy something up, send it to Jackie, have her distribute it to everybody, send your comments back.
Okay, so I was happy with the last paragraph, but would you mind reading it?
The Board of Education seeks an individual with visionary leadership and strong administrative skills to serve the district as superintendent. The salary will be in the range of $240,000 plus an excellent comprehensive benefits package. The final salary for the successful candidate will be negotiated and determined based upon proven experience, qualifications, and meeting board criteria. I have one question about that. Does the superintendent pay for her own benefits or not? She does.
Does, but
So
she
that-
doesn't have to. That's current contract, but they'll have
Yeah.
other contract.
So do we want to say that the salary's in the range of plus an excellent comprehensive benefits package?
I don't know
I
about
like,
that.
I kind of really beginning to like your wording a lot better. Competitive salary.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I mean,
It's negotiable, so why put a number on it?
I agree, but are you going, but you were saying that the Ray and Associates felt firmly, we spent so much time talking with them about the amount.
I was
But-
the only one who'd object, but I've seen this stuff so many.
Yeah,
I actually agree. I don't feel comfortable with it, and and part of the thing that I want to do between now and then is I said I was going to, they're public documents. I want to get some superintendent contracts. I want to make sure I have a clear sense of both this county and Contra Costa County, different salaries. So I actually agree that I don't want to put a number down.
I'll rewrite it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have a consensus on that we want to remove the number? Because we had a long discussion last
We
time.
did.
And we did conclude that we would say competitive benefits, I believe, in addition to salary, because benefits can be all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be health and welfare. So I don't know, I feel like we
Well, let me
don't
say-
have them here to defend.
Well, let me say again, maybe, I think that would be more of what we put in the brochure.
Yes.
And we are going to have them here for that discussion. She's going to be in Palo Alto the night before, and then
Okay.
she'll be leaving the morning after, so we have to decide on what hour we're going to actually.
Competitive salary and comprehensive benefits package, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Let me clarify what we're agreeing to make sure I understand. So in the initial EdCal, we're just going to make the general statement, no. But in the brochure,
We'll have a discussion on the 29th of whether we want to do that. I
Right.
felt a little hustled that time, but
I did
Okay.
too.
So we'll have a discussion on the 29th of the brochure. We don't want the amount in the
In the ad.
EdCal ad.
if anybody
no one
does
does
their
it.
homework, when we say competitive, they're going to look at all the salaries in Alameda County, which is all public information, and they're going to get a ballpark figure of what they're going to get paid.
Okay,
These are not, anybody who's not bright enough to do that really shouldn't get this job anyway.
all right. So,
No, I agree.
okay, good point. So, okay, so we need to
Believe
clarify
me,
this,
I
and we
know
need,
all the folks
we
who
need
are
to
out there
we need to
looking.
extend
Yeah.
the meeting, first of all.
Can we
So-
extend for 5 minutes?
Let's extend for
Send the meeting 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Do I have a second?
7.5 minutes.
I second 7.5 minutes.
7.5 minutes it is. Have we taken an action?
Did we vote?
No, I made a motion, it hasn't been seconded.
And your motion, can you repeat, please?
My Yeah, gee, what was my motion? Well,
We wouldn't remember
to
it
substitute
anyway.
that first paragraph with Pat's paragraph with the edit that was specified before. And I'd amend my motion now to include the change from a specific dollar amount to the wording that Ron has. And that Ron will give the full wording of the ad to Jackie.
Yes.
Or, yeah, let's say Ron will give the
Make
full
sure
wording.
that everybody's comfortable. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable. with
Everyone's
what goes out.
comfortable.
Okay, and to clarify, I'm sorry, Alan, I'll give you a chance in 1 second, but to
Yeah.
clarify, you want that then to come back to all of us, but for
Unless you're
comment.
comfortable with,
But we can't comment, we could comment to
To Jackie and
Jackie, but we
Jackie
can't comment to each other on it, so I'm not sure we want to have 5 different sets of comments coming back. I think we
trust
should
you.
leave it.
Yeah, I trust Ron.
okay.
I think
I
he knows
trust
what.
you.
Okay,
Well, I'll
now-
probably get some feedback from the folks down south. Anyway.
Yeah.
okay, and then I think Alan wants
Thank
to
you.
weigh in here too, before we have a second.
So I agree with pretty much everything that has been said. It's a little confusing to me, but my direction is to keep it a minimalist ad as it is in the Cal.
I agree, but on the other hand, because of the national surge, I don't read
I
the
can live with
national
a
journals.
wordy advertisement as long as it doesn't say too much. But I can also feel more comfortable with a minimalist ad.
With a what?
With a minimalist ad like we're seeing examples of in the
Ray does it a little different.
paper.
You
Do
know,
we
I
have a
never really
second
paid
for
attention.
Paul's motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Yeah,
Jury.
I'll have.
I think the most important
That
thing
brings
is to
us
get it
to-
out there.
Board and superintendent comments.
Well, Well, the one thing we need to decide in the Gordon Superintendent comments is the hour
Absolutely.
for the 29th. So
Why don't we begin with that
I
then,
promise
Ron?
to have that to them.
Is that a Wednesday?
It's a Wednesday.
So this is Wednesday, the 29th. When can we meet, is the question.
Let me get a calendar.
How much
out.
time do they need, Ron?
I don't remember.
I have it on the calendar for 3 to 4.
3 to 4?
3 to 4
As a
p.m.
holding place. That must have come from somewhere.
I know she doesn't want to stay late at night because she has an early plane.
The earlier, the better for me. 3 to 4 works for me on the 29th.
Could I just clarify? I had thought, because I was trying to look at the timeline, I had thought that was the time when they were going to present to us the results of the survey so that we would know the basis of the profile. Is that true?
What it says,
Yeah, I opened up the schedule and I don't, it's on
so
my
it
other
says,
computer.
board to finalize superintendent profile for promotional flyer and online application form.
So I imagine they're going to come with a draft.
I
don't know
think
if they're
so.
I'll ask them to send us the draft
Yeah.
earlier so that,
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
want to make sure we get that.
That'd be good.
Because-
Sorry.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because there's a closure date, you know, for the last surveys. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a closure date. So then I assume that then they're going to crunch
The number.
the numbers, and I wouldn't mind having that a little bit ahead of time if we're
Yeah.
only going to meet for an hour.
Especially, you know, they're also going to be crunching what they get from all these meetings that they're holding. Hopefully, there's going to be a lot that's
Right.
coming out of that.
The deadline for the survey
think that's
input
actually
is
more
the
important than the
23rd of
survey.
January
Okay,
for input to this, from the survey.
okay,
for the
so,
survey.
And the final meetings will be done by the 23rd. That gives them
Right,
6 days to put this together.
compile and,
And so it's going to be, it's tight.
So are we comfortable with 3 to 4?
I
Yeah,
am.
that's good for me.
Works for me. Well, fantastic then. So let's,
okay.
oh, sorry, Pat, does it not
Sure.
work for you?
No, it does work for me, but I have a comment still in the 7.5 minutes about.
I am about this or about something else?
Well, related to this.
Well, let's just decide, we've decided this, so it's going to be 3 to
I'm just-
4 on the
Okay.
29th.
I think maybe we should give it a little more time, though, maybe 3 to 5.
3 to 4.
No, if it's going to go to 5, I need to start it earlier. I can't be here till
All right,
5.
let's go 3 to 4. We're going to have to really be efficient.
I could do 2 to 4, but I can't do 3 to 5.
If
I can do 2 to 4.
I can do 2 to 4.
I can make that work. if
Hopefully
you
it
need
won't
more
last
time.
that long.
How about you?
2 to 4 I can do on that day, yes.
Okay,
Is that okay, Jay?
2 to 4 it is.
okay.
All right, other board comments?
Okay, so related to that, I had suggested before about, and asked a couple times about the possibility of having the survey in languages other than English.
Oh, yeah.
But we're a little bit short on time now before the survey, so I wanted to actually propose an alternative, and then I would try to help have that done. I was going to suggest as an alternative having I think our major language groups are we could check would be Chinese and Korean. We could check.
It's Mandarin and Cantonese, I believe.
Right, but what
Yeah,
that's true. We have to. I have to check and see what with the translators. You know what the primary group is. I'm wondering if what we could do is, because this could be done, I think, fairly efficiently. Number one, put out on the different entries in Korean and the Chinese characters are the same for both dialects. That we are going to have these community input sessions and that a translator will be available. And then second,
Now, we don't have anybody yet to translate.
oh, you've checked already? Well, no, because then I would take the responsibility.
Can you do that?
For trying to find out if we could get a translator. Do you have a comment on that?
I had to have the Healthy Kids Survey translated into Korean, Mandarin, and Spanish, and we have staff that I used that are available and very excellent at making those translations.
And can they be available on the 21st to do any translating for the community?
I can, if I have the date and time, I can contact them via email and see if they're available.
Okay, so why don't maybe I'll check with you on that. Let's remember, Superintendent Medina, I believe, already speaks Spanish. So
That's
we have
correct, right.
translator. So it would be a Mandarin and Korean translator likely. I don't know if Cantonese is a large enough population, but may I say, it would also be great. Sometimes the translator is already a member of our community, either as a parent or just living in our community. Well, then we'll just have them. That would be great. Because then we would just have, even if they don't need to translate, then there would just be another person there who would be part of the participation. So I will look at the times and get back to you. And the only thing we need to check about is whether we need both Mandarin and Cantonese. Usually don't you have some sort of, usually you have some sort of percentage for each year of how many speakers you have, and so then you could decide whether you would need. I would actually guess it would be Mandarin.
We don't know what the turnout's going to be like, and we definitely, if we want to put something out on the e-trees, has to go out almost tomorrow, because the meeting is next Tuesday.
Well, I would be content if it went out by the end of the week, just as long as I felt there was some outreach.
I think that's good.
Thank you, Pat, for looking into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, because I was
Definitely.
worried about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Other board comments? Alan?
So Paul and I attended a leadership conference in Newark. I thought it was very valuable. We addressed kind of specifically the local control funding issues and the core curriculum issues and working as a team to promote and educate the local community. I thought was some very valuable direction. I would like to continue to keep track of the status of our class size reduction program. Last time we looked at it, we had 9 out of 25 para educators. Is that situation changing?
No,
at
we
all?
actually, we approved tonight, I think 18 or 19
Well,
folks.
yeah, I saw, that's true, the personnel, but are all those, it was difficult to tell whether they were elementary ed.
Maybe we could ask for a report.
Yeah, that's
So-
an agenda.
As an agenda,
A small agenda item. next
very
time.
small agenda item,
Right.
either in February or
Right.
Okay,
March.
to clarify, this is not a class size reduction, a report on class size reduction. This is a report
On the paras.
on the hiring of
Classroom.
Paraeducators.
para-educators, and a good idea.
And I meant to comment on that during the beginning of the meeting. A great job in finding folks, Peter. I want
Yeah.
to compliment you.
I'm
on that.
impressed with that list of the personnel. I'm just not sure who it is or where they're going. Also, I was at this afternoon at the Albany Child Care Center, and those people are deeply affected by the loss of Reza, the teacher. They're having to deal with it. It just points out how important a teacher is to community and the kids and families. The other thing is I have Albany Education Foundation Chocolate Gala tickets for sale. I've already sold 8. Or no, 4. I need to sell a few more.
Well, you've got 2 for me, right?
Yeah, I've got you down for 2.
Good.
Sure.
I just forgot my.
And Patton and Paul.
Put
and
me
I
down
are
for 2 as
all
well.
going. You want to?
I'll take 2 as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And finally, I'll just close by saying that in February, we will be doing superintendent evaluation. We will also be doing board self-evaluation and looking at our governance handbook. So there'll be a little navel-gazing in February, as well as a number of other things.
That's a busy.
That's all on the
long
11th?
list.
All that on the 11th of February? Or?
At the moment, that's our only meeting in
Great.
February, and that's when we're doing it. So we'll see what comes up. Thanks, everybody. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.